I did too, can't tell.
Yeah.
All 6 that are left?
I think I'm ready.
You
And
ready?
everything should be working, at least it was when I left here at 10:30 this morning.
All right, everyone, it's 2:04. We'll go ahead and call the workshop to order. So in attendance, for the record, we have all board members. Doug, oh, actually, we don't have Bob.
Bob's gonna be late.
Bob will be
Oh.
late. He is
Okay.
coming.
He's coming?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Carol, Ed Tinkle, Flavia Walsh, and then Doug Banks. And we'll go ahead and we'll start with. Do you want to present to Chelsea like how we did it last, or you want Laura?
Yeah, we'll tag team it.
Okay.
So this first item is the organizational chart that was requested at the last meeting. Understand that we're just starting to gear up for budget. Typically, we do capital first, and then we do personnel, and then we give you a draft. That gives staff time to give you a rough draft of the budget. Chime in. Really, this is just our existing positions. We do have currently 3 vacancies. One is a field operator, one is where Julie is retiring, it's an AP payroll specialist. And then the third is a part-time park attendant. We haven't necessarily had any positions vacant for an extended period of time. I think like
For the utilities technician, it's more like we hire somebody and then someone leaves, so it's not like the same position has been open. We've been able to hire people that we have
Retention
kind of like
issues?
a rotating.
so we're
So if we go to the one that says Gateway District Organizational Chart by position, so is this what you're envisioning for this coming year? I'm assuming this chart is actually right now.
yes, ma'am.
So are you envisioning the same thing, or are you envisioning changes somewhere?
So actually, technically, there are 2 positions on here that we did not put on here, that we did not hire this year. Instead, we contracted out. One was a GIS analyst position, which we're able to use external resources for. So we kind of shifted that money towards a contract. And then the other one was
Landscape, which is not on here.
a landscape lead. We took those duties and gave those to the project manager. So we'll actually have a deduct of 2 positions next year, 2 full-time positions, but that monies will move into the operations side of it.
And
I
it
have
was,
some questions. Go ahead.
and it was more efficient for us to outsource the GIS.
Yes.
We got more productivity from a contractor than we would internally, more cost
Yeah,
effective.
we're working with Tetra Tech they have a whole team that is dedicated to strictly GIS. So we're going to give it a try this year. We believe that'll be more efficient. We've tried actively recruiting for that position since the budget started and have been unsuccessful.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as long as we're hitting our timeline on the accomplishments, fine. The landscape position, just the benefit of having that underneath the project manager gives us what advantage, or what?
The duties of that merged to the project manager position. Since I started here, and really with that position has been the hardest to retain. It's ultimately a contracts manager position with some knowledge of the landscaping that we have out. So, and that's mainly what the project manager does anyway, is contracts management. He has picked up pretty much all of the requirements that were of the landscape lead position. So there was cost savings there, and
the responsibility of that is to ensure that our landscape contracts are being executed at quality, on schedule. So you have to have you're working closely with staff that has the expertise, so you trickle that up. This is what needs to be done, this is what needs to be called out, or they have that internal expertise within. What have we seen? Because that landscaping and, let's say, maintenance period, pond maintenance, that type of stuff, we've had issues over the years, and it always seems when we come to either pre-contract or post-contract, we identify things that weren't getting done or wasn't in the contract. Under this current structure with the project manager, are we seeing a higher efficiency in in work execution, higher quality, accountability? Are we seeing those things occur under this structure?
From a staffing perspective, yes. From a contracts perspective, there's been no return in Mainscape, and you've felt it on your side in Gateway Greens. So I am very confident with staff's capabilities to continue in this, to manage the Mainscape
Well,
contract.
and I would say that I don't having a land have any less issues. The issues are on the vendor side, not on our side.
Yeah, and so, Go ahead.
We learned something just in the last 2 weeks, because we're making a switch. And we're learning our vulnerability of some of this new high-tech equipment. We need somebody here in one of the departments, wherever, I'm assuming Public Works, that needs to be knowledgeable of this new baseline irrigation system we're coming. Because we don't, and we're relying on our vendor. I guarantee you, you're going to get in trouble. You're
Okay,
going to
so
get in trouble.
that's a great point. You want to comment
Yeah, I
to
just
that?
want to touch on that. So Nathan, who is our projects manager, is overseeing the implementation of this. We have talked about when that system comes to fruition, is hiring an irrigation tech that is their sole job, you know, as part, in addition to
On
maintenance.
our side,
On our side, and take that
that would
responsibility.
communicate with the vendor.
Yes. Yes.
So there would be a reduction in the contract for those services because they're included, okay. And then I will also chime in regarding, I never felt like the landscaping position was a full-time position.
Agreed.
You know, and I don't, the issues that we're having now is the issues that we see.
They need to wear two hats.
Yeah,
But I am worried about when we do get the new system, how is that gonna be? But if the vision is to go ahead and hire an expert, then I'm more comfortable because we'll just be deducting from one another, maybe an offset
Yes.
or more, but okay, that makes sense.
And what I see is, so for one, and I'm gonna lump these together because I think when you look at maintenance, I think you run into some of the similar issues. That's pond maintenance, as well as landscape. Because we have very certain criteria, it's very vendor dependent. And just due to the vast volume of ponds, volume of space for landscaping, you have to stay on top of that stuff. But also, in both those areas, you probably see a lot of turnover within vendors. So it's more of a vendor management position than it is, let's say, like a landscape lead or even a projects contracts person. To me, it's a vendor management position. And you either have to have the right oversight and accountability between that individual and the vendors, but also you have to have the right controls in the contract. You have to have things where if there is turnover or if there's mis-execution. I mean, to me, turnover should never be an excuse from a vendor's perspective because they should anticipate that. And again, I'm not paying for turnover. Turnover is a you problem, not a me problem. So that's where I'm hoping that what we've seen by having dedicated contract individuals and let's say a project manager, that we're also identifying controls that we either have in place in contracts or in the future where if there is a lapse or if there is a drop in quality, do that stuff. We've got some clawbacks or some controls that we can kick off or we can execute that says, okay, if you don't hit certain things, we either get credits on that or we get, something, because we have to hold that accountability. And I'm not a big advocate of, let's say, performance bonuses, so to speak, if it's not something that's quantitative that you can control. But I think the contract should have stipulations if you don't hit this or if you have been cited for, these areas, that there is some clawbacks or something on our side.
We have those in both of those contracts.
Usually a point system.
Yeah, it's in the landscape one, we actually have dollars sitting in a separate non-interest bearing account that if they don't perform, and we have all of the language in the contract. Same thing, again, since I've been here, every contract we've rewritten, we put in those clauses. So we've protected ourselves not only on that front, but also Daniel and Elle and Stephanie and Nathan, we've been working hard on implementing Cartograph and using that as our work order management system and being able to better monitor and put inspections on paper having reports pushed up, being able to communicate with the vendor in writing instead of 10,000 emails flying around. So implementing this work order management system in the next year is going to be a game changer.
And there's one other piece. I know for as long as I've been on the board, and I know Ed's been right there with me, we always talk about value engineering. The things that we do repetitively, we should see value engineering and efficiencies as a result. Kind of goes back to my automotive days. You know, OEMs trickle down to the tier 1s, the tier 2s, the tier 3 suppliers. It's either cost reduction or quality improvements. So I know we've got inflation, cost of living, gas, all that stuff, but we should be seeing contract over contract efficiencies from these reoccurring vendors. And I take it all the way up to Tetra Tech. You know, the amount of time they've been with us, or Mainscape, or whatever vendors that we use, even some of the ones we're using for pond bank restorations, Met-Tower, are the ones that we use repeatedly. They should see improvement in process. Ponds might be a little tricky because not all pond is created equal, and so execution could be slightly different. But we really need to see, here, Mainscape, we are more efficient because we have this routine. We're using this type of machinery versus this. We've got better skilled workers, whatever. I'm not saying we have to see necessarily a price reduction, even though I would rather see that. But we also have to show higher quality service. Because if we have to just keep paying increases because of inflation, that doesn't sit well with me if we're not seeing equal or greater to value. So these are just things that I would encourage.
Well, I think a lot of that would be helped by having inspection on our side, staff that while they're not out there 24/7, they can be overseeing stuff and accountability.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
And just, quarterly business reviews.
So if you think you're going to do it over and over and over again, but I've learned my lesson in this last week with this baseline and switching over on irrigation. Maybe what we're doing and making this change and essentially eliminating most of the equipment, and putting in all new equipment, we didn't do it that way. We utilized the existing valves, incorporated them into the system. And every time I turn around, I've got a change order work item, $500 here, $600 there, $300 here, $1,000 here. What do you say?
Yeah, you have to do it.
What do you say? You have to do it.
Yeah. And that's one area, like irrigation is one of those areas
somebody
can bleed
needs
you
to be
dry.
able to see this stuff and say, yeah, it's broken. Yeah, we need to do it. Otherwise, I guarantee you, you're going to be writing. Right now, we're looking at a 10% overrun just in change orders for broken equipment.
Yeah, and I'll say one thing too, and maybe Daniel has a good grasp on this, but when we talk about, an irrigation specialist or, whatever that role is going to be, it's going to be imperative that they're not only there at the beginning of the project and afterwards, but also there needs to be a lead-in time, because we need to have an irrigation expert who is at the table prior to when work gets started, so they have an understanding of our in-depth knowledge of our existing system, where everything is. And I would love to say that that's Daniel or someone on his team, but Daniel's responsible for a very large area. I think the project and the sensitivity and the cost that's going to be associated, we may need to look at pulling the trigger on that position sooner rather than later. And if you need if you need allocated funds for that, or if you need the board to approve that position, like literally, let's open it now so we can start looking. I think we would all be in agreement that it's a good idea to get that started, because the cost implications of not having the right people at the table during that time could cost us way more than what it would do for 3 months prior to having that person on board.
We could get burnt.
We'll discuss internally. I had originally projected that conversation this time next year when we're talking the next year's budget, just because I know with construction and timing of everything that it's going to take quite a bit of time. We're only at 30% design.
Well, it's going to take you time to find that person.
Yeah,
I
think it'll be.
And I would maybe do a contract. So hear me out on this. Like maybe we contract that position out for 12 months with the possibility of it converting. And it could be a full-time position. That's fine. But I think the challenge you're going to be on that is finding the right depth of knowledge, given the timing-wise, being able to have the runway long enough to ramp them up, but then also it's going to have to be attractive enough that you retain someone, because it's not going to do any benefit for us to have someone on board, go through pre and implementation just to have them leave after 6 months. So that's going to be a risk.
One of the issues we're having right now, and we have since we completed the baseline system over a year and a half ago, is that the vendor, i.e. Mainscape for us, and Mainscape for us here, they gotta have somebody that knows what the hell they're doing on this job. They gotta know what they're doing, because otherwise, we're gonna be spending a lot of money fixing stuff. that's
So you're
probably-
saying we need a representative from Mainscape at the table?
we need to know that if we're gonna build this $5 million piece of equipment and put it out there, and we're gonna hand it over them to operate it, I wanna make sure that.
Someone's knowledgeable of the
Somebody
system.
there knows what the hell they're doing.
We kind of, wait, very, very top of that. We did have that conversation, I think, 2 years ago with Mainscape when we were talking about the system that we were gonna put in. We did ask those questions then. My concern is, what if we don't go with Mainscape? We're
Well,
gonna still
any-
have that.
any vendor.
That's what I'm saying.
When-
We're
when
still.
When we just did the RFP, a qualification for the bidding was, one, you had to come to the pre-bid meeting, and two, you had to show and demonstrate knowledge of the baseline system. You didn't do either one of those, we didn't even allow you to bid,
But I think that's an after effect, so I think it would just continue, because that would be with any vendor regardless. So we'll put in a system, because we're not gonna put in a system that somebody can work on it, we'll put in a system that is adequate for the needs of the community, right? And then when we go to a vendor, then we say, can you work on this, and then be part of the
but
specification.
not only work on it, operate it, know how to run it.
We did, as of now, 2 years ago when I sat with Chelsea at the table, and I think Danny was part of the conversation, we lightly touched on this subject, and they were comfortable with it. And I think there was even one addition type of product that we were not aware that they were working on it. They mentioned to us, but to me, I was like, it's way too soon,
Let me,
but they were aware of it.
let me go back, let me talk with RWA about timelines, because again, I'm thinking we're a year and a half out before we even really get under construction with this project.
Well, keep in mind, I agree with what Doug was saying. Get our guy that's gonna be our eyes on. We need him in, not before, while we're doing digging. We need him to look at it before, while it's just pencils.
Yeah, and there's
on paper
also,
that we can change it.
yeah, and I would also look to insert an amendment into our existing contract that requires Mainscape to have a point of contact or an irrigation specialist that can work with our team
That's the way.
during, they should be familiar with similar systems, and I don't think we should look for an additional charge on that, just due to our length of service. We're not asking someone really for an additional, necessarily a ton of additional dedicated hours, but someone that we can train in conjunction with our vendor that we use. So they're going to get trained up on our system, but we need a dedicated person.
We have a backup.
Yeah, so it's a value benefit to both organizations, and I don't think it should come at additional costs. So but that's an amendment that I would look to push forward in that contract.
Let me go back and talk with RWA and Nathan and Daniel and just get a rough timeline. I think it may be premature to have this position this year, but I want to get a better timeline from them. If they say no, they think we're going to be under construction next year, then we'll bring that back.
Yeah, just back into the timeline a little bit.
I don't think you're gonna find this guy just out there underneath a tree waiting for a call.
You never know.
They're hard to get, because this is a very sophisticated system.
Where are we at in our
Immensely
Mainscape contract?
sophisticated.
How many years in?
We just renewed it.
So we're a 3-year, or is it
We're-
2?
It's a 3-year contract, so we've probably got 2 more years.
2 more years. So Mainscape is baked in for 2 years. Now, what we could do is look for Mainscape. We could either contract this person from Mainscape if we wanted to, and that way Mainscape stays sticky with us on that. If we can't, if we're having challenges going external, there's some options that we may have here, but I don't think this irrigation person is going to fall off a tree.
I want to be cautious for exactly what Flavia said, is they may not be who we end up going with this baseline system, even though they're the most familiar and they have offered, any input that, to provide to us. But we'll come back to you for this decision.
Yeah, and that person doesn't necessarily have to come from Mainscape, but I'm saying there might be irrigation specialists within these landscape companies that would contract out to us for a certain amount of time. The one thing I just wanted, on the utilities, those specialty field positions, Laura made a point that said, typically when we have a backfill, it's not necessarily, the same exact position. This person leaves, this person steps into that role. And so I assume they're doing a little bit of different responsibility, right? Their job responsibility might be slightly different, or
For
No, they'll check this.
it's the same.
Generally, why are they leaving? I guess that's my question. Is it a pay, is it a benefit, is it the load of
It
work?
was,
Is
it was paid.
Because that's what I think a conversation I had with you about
Yeah.
7 months ago,
Yeah.
and it was a pay issue.
And we've
Yeah.
addressed
Pay
that.
slash benefits,
We
right?
haven't had anybody, the one person leave since we adjusted the pay schedules, but they went to do something.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
addressed that.
Yeah, it's
so-
probably all
So
over.
that's what I was
But,
thinking.
and that's one area that I would always have one above, kind of what we need.
That's what we have.
That's the
Yeah.
model we're using
Yeah.
today. Okay,
So
so you always have a flex.
I want to be
uh,
clear though, because one of, talking about that work order management system, one of the things that we've implemented is a valve exercising program and hydrants. So that's not only the potable, but the sewer, the irrigation valves, and then every hydrant in our system. So the first of each month, that utility team is issued 100 plus, maybe even 200 plus work orders to exercise valves. So we calculated our entire system, divided that by 12 months and said, our goal is to exercise all of our valves at least once a year. And so my plan is to take what, that information that we have so far, the time that it's taking them, seeing, do we have enough staff to meet that need as well as do everything else?
Yeah.
So that information we're compiling and we'll have it finalized, but as of right now, I'm talking with staff, I don't envision any additional positions for next year. If anything, a reduction of FTEs.
Full-time equivalents.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Love our acronyms.
so then back to the chart itself. So we can more or less, what you're suggesting is that this be our organizational chart for next year,
Yeah.
for this coming budget. Okay. At the next meeting then, could you enhance this chart by giving us the silos that everybody's going to be sitting on? You don't forget the utilities. That's not it, but the rest of it, can you give us an idea
Yes.
where the money is going to land?
Yes.
What silo, what bucket, whatever
We-
word you want to use.
Laura's been working on that, so
Okay.
we'll have that for you.
Okay, so then if we go to the one by name, the organizational chart by name, you've already told us that Elle is retiring this summer. Are there any other position movements in here that we need to be aware of, or that you're thinking of, or that,
But Julie is
Yeah, with Julie,
retiring
yeah.
as well,
oh, Julie's, okay,
our fiscal specialist. And we're changing that position to be an AP / payroll specialist.
AP accounts payable?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
So taking some of the responsibilities that Laura is doing now that are more,
The administrative side of HR, like the onboarding, hiring,
Data
the
entry.
payroll, that kind of stuff, take that off my plate. I'll still keep like actual HR, but the administrative side would shift to this. I would be like the backup for that.
the only other changes that I could see is we've established career ladders this year and given those to staff and say, if you're a maintenance worker 3 now, or if you're a utility operator 3 now, we've told them exactly what they need to do to get and to be promoted to a utility field operator 2, a 1, et cetera. So if anything, it would be additional education and trainings for staff, and somebody who's a 3 could move to 2 or 2 to a 1, et cetera.
okay.
So, but I don't see any
But
other
you're talking
movements.
more or less internal
Yes,
here and everything, and not necessarily hiring a bunch of people from outside.
correct.
And
Now, I would like to caveat all of this, that as of right now, Pelican has 3 subcommittees that are doing a lot of the legwork. If anything were to happen with those subcommittees, we would have to reevaluate our staffing.
Okay.
And I think that's a conversation that we should definitely have it on the table sooner than later, given what has happened in the last week and some questions that I'll address at 3 o'clock. And I think that's the clarification, or we need to just, yeah, I think that we can incorporate that.
And under Carrie's position, that's also programs and events falls under her purview. As we go into this next year, I would love to see some expectations more around programs. And part of our goals will be to establish 3 new programs for district utilization for residents of Gateway. You know, I'd like to dive into that a little bit more.
I know that the board assigned that to the Parks and Rec Committee, and I know that they've been tossing that around, but had a couple resignations, so we've got some vacancies that we need to get backfilled on the park.
Yeah, but I wouldn't, I mean, it's great for the Parks and Recs, but
But that's the staff.
organically, that should be, you know, with Gary and
I
Parks
think
and
we
Rec.
need them to focus in on some
Yeah.
things instead of shotgunning it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's, to me, and I would look at the demographics too. I think if I'm just lowballing it, I'd say 3 new programs. One should be something that is dedicated to our seniors. One maybe for all, and then another one could be maybe around our youth. And it could be anything from a pickleball league to, you know, maybe something more around the you know, pool, or, I mean, there's so many. And I would go to Pelican, just look at all the programs that they have. I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult to at least, let's identify 5 and the benefit that they have to Gateway and just get them kicked off.
And then, before we leave, structure and people, last year, when we were talking about this, we kind of left the subject of benefits and pensions and things like that. You were going to get back to the staff and see, it seemed like when I first came on the board a couple years ago, we were very good at training people, and then they left to get better paying jobs. And we were going to work on a program to not only train them, but keep them. So at our next meeting, could you bring back whatever you have in mind for benefits and retention and pensions, or whatever program you're thinking about?
And I think what we should see there is if we're looking at increasing benefits, there's a dollar amount associated with that. And I know that Laura did a lot of really good work on that, I don't know how many months ago, where it said this is the amount. It was a couple, 100,000, 100.
To go to FRS for just.
Yeah, just for that.
Just the people in the retirement
Right.
right now.
Just those, it was like 130,000.
Yes.
Well, there's 2 ways we can go about this. One, we can offer benefits that are comparable to what's in the area, or we take that 130,000 and distribute among base pay. So you can either pay people more on the front end and say, look, we're going to pay you more, and you can take that money and find, you know, supplemental health care or add to it or whatever. Or we're going to say, hey, we offer really great benefits, and if you look at total rewards, which is your total compensation, you're equal to or even above what most, you know, what most organizations would pay. That's an organizational philosophy, and I don't know in our situation if it's more advantageous for us to bulk up our benefits, because it would only impact 20%, you know, positively only really impact 20% of our population. Whereas if we were to take that money and just bump up our base pay, that might be a more attractive thing. I don't know the answer to that because I haven't seen the numbers, but we should be looking at both ways. We don't have to go all in on the benefits piece. I think at the end of the day, it could be one or the other, or it could be both. But that's what I would look at, because I think a lot of people in today's environment are probably looking more for higher base than they are benefits.
The only, I will say, thanks to this board, we've done a lot of increasing of our benefits, staying within budget, of course, through staggered retirement contributions based on tenure. We moved our entire health plan to Cigna, which is a PPO instead of an HMO, so they don't have to go get, you know, to your general doctor before you go to a specialist.
We were able to reduce our deductibles
A lot.
went from like $3,000 down to like.
I know we've made some great improvements in this area. My point was we just need to look at options.
The remaining thing is spouse or family added benefits, but you hit the nail on the head. Doing that, it wouldn't benefit me, it wouldn't benefit her, but
There's your problem you'll get.
you've got.
But if I paid you $7,000 or $10,000 more annually, then you could afford to buy in for your spouse if it made more sense. And those that don't have a spouse, well, why am I not getting that same
Benefit.
bonus of that? And so it's just,
That is an age-old problem. problem. Believe me. And I never solved it, I guarantee you.
The
It
only
was a
Problem
tough
with
one.
age?
It's a tough one
The
because you
only-
have such disparity in the workforce.
The only thing, if you look at like the county or even the city, most larger municipalities pay 50% of either family or spouse. And then the employee would have to pick up the other 50%. That's the only disparity between us and other municipalities right
What do
now.
they do, 150 or 90, 10 and 50? Employee 100%
Yes,
and then 50 on the
Yeah.
spouse.
Yeah.
Well, and let's think too, I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we also have to understand and know what kind of organization we are. We're not like the county or the city where you have lifers, people that will work for 20 years and they will retire. It's very unusual.
They'll be
and
employed for 20 years.
Yeah, it's even unlikely in almost in any organization today for you to work 20 years at the same organization. So we're not that organization. We anticipate people working 3 to 5 years at most, and then they move on. So, accruing some of the pension or the 401k type stuff may not be that big of a deal. So there's just so many variables we need to look at. And I applaud staff for doing as much as they've done with the limited resources at their disposal up until now.
we'll keep evaluating and bring back to you guys with the personnel at the next meeting, some options.
I would just like to see if you're proposing any kind of a benefits package up front. Because in my mind, whenever you're budgeting, you start with the people first and see what you have to do to either keep or enhance or whatever them. And then later on, you get down to, are we going to buy a new truck or are we going to do this or that or whatever? But I think we need to keep in mind that our employees are our most valuable asset, period. And just be accurate and timely with that.
So we'll go ahead and move into the capital budget discussion.
Right.
And then one thing, just, if we can just have date, like put, like a footer with the date.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Given
So-
that- Given that this is one out of 100,000, yeah.
So this next item is more of a first blush of capital projects or initiatives for next year, well, really the next 5 years, but if you focus on the FY 2026 column, the first, if I don't know how you want to go through by fund or just if you have any questions about any of the specific projects.
Well, I'll throw out an example of just one
We'll
that,
just start page 6 and then we'll go questions on that.
taking the utilities one, is in my knowledge of the community and the district. 29 lift stations, estimated service life 30. Lift stations, and they got service lives all over the hell.
Yes.
Well, that's what we're
Those-
missing
those
on
have
this.
got-
Is if it's 30 years, where are we currently at in that 30-year cycle? Oh, we have 15,
It's a
and now
big
lift stations could
difference.
be all over the place, but that's what we're missing on
Yeah,
this.
and I could see that being in a 5-year deal, 0 to 5, 6 to 10, so forth. But then put them, because if you've got them to where the majority of them are 25 to 30 years, then the amount of money we have to put aside initially
It
is.
falls in the
is
next 3 to
minimal.
5 years.
But if half of these all have a 5-year life out of 30 to go, we got a problem.
Well, so staff has put together a plan that we rehab 2 lift stations a year, and that'll get us on the cycle that we need. This is actually a 10-year plan. We just did.
But my point is that the only reason I'm bringing it up is I just went through the HOA training session yesterday and they hammered capital reserve. You've got to be accurate on the description of the items that deserve capital reserve. You've got to be accurate on the amount of money it's going to take to replace them. The only one that where you can be a little bit flexible is, do you want to build in an inflation? Or do you just want to take today's cost and assume it's going to be there 20 years from now? You can get burned either way. But the big thing is then you've got to put the cash in every single year for every single item if you want a true capital reserve.
Yes.
And that means you need a lot more detail in my eye here than this. These are the topics, but they need to be split apart to get more detail.
Or I have a question, because my understanding is the more detail you put in, and the more that money has to use for that, it won't allow staff to move within
Why can't we
that
pool?
category.
We could pool. Why can't we pool within the?
So that's what I said, the only thing that will increase is the dollar amount, giving it that there will be more scope under the line item. But what I'm afraid is if you just detail too much an item to the dollar.
The only thing you've got is, I understand would be is if we pool, we just gotta watch pool silos.
Well,
You
look,
can't enter,
the way that you
can't
have
take
to,
and pool
you
one
have to
silo
have
and different
specifics.
because it's different method of funding it.
you, this is a tiered, the CIP should be tiered. You should have at the very, to the infinite detail, when you say 29 lift stations, you list, here's the 29 lift stations, here's their current
Service life.
length of
Cost
life.
of
Remaining
And,
life.
and then you can drill those up to lift station rehab, and then you could even go one tier higher to say this is, public works, rehabilitation project. So we can
do
get
that.
them to a bigger bucket, but you've got to get to that smaller detail. And the one areas that I would encourage staff to look at is, one, we need to know what is the existing, what is the time frame that they're currently operating under?
Where are we in the life cycle?
Yeah, where are they at in the life cycle? And then two, we should have some type of score. Maybe it's 1 through 10. So my example of this, and its impact to the district if that rehab or that replacement is not done, or if there's a failure. So as an example, a lift station. If a lift station is not maintained or not replaced during that life cycle, what is the impact that it may have on the district or the
Well,
residents?
it's a severity issue.
It's severity, almost like a severity score. And we might have some items that are higher and some that are lower, and we still might do those because it's an efficiency play, or it may not be a catastrophic risk failure. But if we replace this system with this system, we're more efficient. It provides cost saving, opportunities. So I think that's what we're missing. I know we're not there, but that's what I would.
Well,
Tony, I have a question.
Yes.
So I know 720 statute says that when you do a reserve and when you either hire somebody to do the reserve studies, they will give you the estimated life. The majority of communities usually they either extend it or they're at the life, right? So that's when it does also include that if an engineer or an architect or the consultant sees an item that needs replacement, now it puts the burden on the HOA to do that replacement in a very short amount of time. Would that apply here? Because that's what I'll be afraid, because the majority of these items that have been neglected, they either have surpassed their life or they're at, right? So for us to get that money, we don't have 8 years to collect the money. We may have a year or two. Are we then in the bind because then it'll be a cost to the residents? Because suddenly now we have all these items because we know there's a lot of things on the table and we may not have the ability to prioritize as we think is best because now we have somebody that's above us, which is going to be the engineer. And that kind of came about after the condo collapse in Sunny House. So I'm wondering, would that apply for us too? Because then we have to be very, very careful. Because if we go out there and we get this and we find out there's a lot of stuff that we need to get done that we know, then are we buying to get it done and within what time frame?
Well,
That statutory scheme, again,
Does that work for us
does
too?
not apply
Okay.
to the.
So
community
ours is
development
not-
district, But it is good, I guess, from a planning perspective to have that and go.
Oh, I don't disagree, yeah.
Again, and then you can update it each year as to what you understand the estimated use. the
So
useful
ours
life
is
might be.
elective.
I'm sorry?
Ours is elective, not mandated.
But
Big
elective but prudent, I would say, based upon my experience with other
So
districts.
that means
And I
that
think
we-
Stephen would also chime in with that, Stephen Bloom and Russ.
Okay, but I mean, if it's elective, then that means that we have some decision that the five of us could make to determine how we tweak it.
Kind of how we did it
Yeah.
at Gateway Greens when we had
Yes.
that meeting. I think that's the last time we did it, right?
Yeah, and then if you
Yeah.
change the use of the money in a future year, from what you are listing now, you need to go through that notice process under the statute, the mailed notice and the notice, because you're changing the purpose for which the funds were initially collected.
Yeah, there's where I'm more concerned than anything is that I totally would love to see an elective pooled method of capital reserve, but within the silos.
Yeah,
The
you can
simple
lump
deal,
your categories,
if we raise the money and the revenue to pay for that, and it comes out of one source, we don't want to transfer that to another source where that's not the case.
Yeah, but again, I don't believe you're locked into the specific projects.
Okay.
Again, you have categories, and again, we'll double check with Stephen and Russ.
Well, that's not
why I
that hard to
understand.
do.
You have categories, you have road improvements, and certain infrastructure, like I said, drainage structures. And if you change the purpose which is used from a category, the different category. I think that's the global macro.
As long as we stay within the categorization.
That's my understanding.
The same as
yes.
with operation.
Yeah,
Sorry?
yeah.
There is no different than how we
Yeah.
we're doing with
we'll
operation.
double check that with
It's
Steve and
exactly the
Russ.
same thing, just.
Laura, you know how Russ's spreadsheets kind of went like this?
They won't be doing that anymore.
That's where we're
getting a new
headed.
one.
Yeah.
So
No, it's getting, we're getting.
we,
Kelsey, do you have any comment or question
well,
on that?
I want to go back to what you started with, Ed, was last year, we had done every year, like if we want to replace this in year 5, then we wanted to budget $5,000 a year for 5 years until we could pay for it. We did it that way last year. You guys said, no, you didn't like that. We only want to budget the year that it needs money to be
Because
funded.
because that's when we
You
saw the
opted
cost.
to
So
do
that's what I
it,
was trying to
yeah.
say, like.
That's
I
what
mean, that's the
sticker
right way to
shock.
do it. However, it's hard to start that,
Yes, it's-
especially when you've got,
yeah,
when you're,
everything.
you already have a pretty big bucket of stuff you're spending for.
You,
So,
you opted to do them, you opted to collect the funds based on the expenses for the year, not to have, to build a reserve. We just, we're gonna need.
but we should always go back and revisit that.
Okay, so.
But we never wanted to do it, to take the capital budget and fund it at 100%. We always talked about 25%, 50%,
Oh, yeah.
Well,
75%.
the thing that's on this schedule is that are there anything on that line? I don't see them jump out. Yes, I do. I see one. Are there anything is there anything that's on here that's identified that's not in this 5-year period, but let's say it's in year 6? So let's say it's a $100,000 item. Are we going to wait to year 6 and get scared with the sticker shock of it? Or are you going to take it and divide it by 6 and put
Like
each
your-
one of the years?
Like your
It's a big
aquifer
difference.
wells,
It's one-
or,
The $250,000 one there.
Yeah, the one that says,
or the 3 million
existing
pumping
2
station.
million gallon tank repairs, it's not budgeted for the next 5 years, but in the 6th year, is it $100,000?
Well, and
Because
also,
it
does
is,
that
you're
price
in-
tag
you're
jump
in
up to
trouble.
4.5?
Yeah, but there's going to be some offsetting things that'll fall off.
What now?
There'll be some things we accomplished in
It depends
26
on what you.
that fall
if-
off.
If we want to try to have somewhat of a level introduction of revenue to pay for this on a level basis, not one of these deals where 1 year our residence rates go way through the roof and then down, and get it level, then the more accurate you are on the date that the money is needed, the better chance you have to having it level.
But you shouldn't be looking beyond 5 years.
Do what?
I don't think you should be looking beyond 5 years.
Oh, everybody will tell you it's 20 years.
That's what I mean, but you're not going to forecast. We should focus on the next
Well,
5.
that's why if you go 20 years, don't put inflation in it. Just take, if the cost of the item is $100,000, assume that it's done in the 20th year, assume it's $100,000. If you start injecting
Well, but that
inflation,
won't be accurate either then.
you will,
But that's when you revise it, because when you do the capital, the number they will give you, that's the number you stick with. Because they
Yes,
are
okay.
taking the life expense, they're expecting that at that time, at least the ones that I had done, if it's $100,000, it's not as of now, is what they're expecting in 5 years, the life expectancy.
The cost of
that-
replacement.
Of that, when it needs to be replaced.
Yeah, I guess, Joseph, from the utility perspective, Raftellus does a 5-year analysis.
Yes.
They go out 5 years,
Yeah.
and what they project the capital cost would be, what revenues and rates need to be in a 5-year
In
window.
5 years, yeah.
So you can look at it in year 2, you can look at the next 5. You know,
the only
it's
thing
like
when you
a
do it
rolling
that
five,
way, just
right?
realize that it's a whole new ballgame in year 6. Because if you've moved those
Well,
stuff out and you haven't
By
covered the
year
cost of
4,
it.
you should be doing and
I
looking
revise,
at.
yeah,
Or,
because
yeah,
once you do
yeah,
it
yeah.
once,
So
you
you're,
just revise
it's
it.
moving all the
Yes.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every year it moves,
So-
absolutely.
Is there anything with,
I'm sorry, Tony?
Yes,
So in Ed's initial thing where he wanted more detail, if you put in here, in 2026, we're going to do lift station A and lift station B. And in 2027, we're going to do C and D. And in 2028, we're going to do G and H, something like that. But suppose sometime next year, lift station G goes down. Is it that amount of detail that causes problem?
no,
Or, I mean, as long as you had 2 lift stations and one of them goes down, so you don't do B and you put G in there instead, that's okay,
that's
right?
correct. Again, yeah, because the capital project is a plan you have for the infrastructure repair or replacement. Then you have the budget based upon that capital project, but if you need to move projects around within that category, you can do that.
That's
Okay.
what she just described as the options you really want to be able to build into it to where you don't have to be
And
perfect.
again, that's my
You
understanding
can,
how.
you can take a hit and
That's
make
my
a
understanding
change.
how it's always been done, and you can double check with Stephen and Russ, but that's, again, it's a category.
the detail
So
on,
other than the useful life remaining, what other detail, Ed, were you looking for?
Having a
Because
real,
otherwise,
having a real
doing
good
two a
idea of the
year-
cost.
To me, it's
Well,
cost,
Yeah.
because I think the last time we did this,
Cost
it was
after that.
half staff, you know, it was prior to, I think, I don't know if you think Laura was here. So it was mainly staff dictating the cost. And that's when we started doing the projects, there was a huge, what was the cost? So to me, if we're gonna do it, then we should have accurate costs.
Yeah, that's
Well,
clear.
and again, back to my point, I think there should be some type of CIP or project rating.
There are so
and
many
that's-
books that you can get on this stuff, utility books, that give you an idea of cost. We're not gonna get any more accurate than that
the
anyway.
procurement items on here, staff has solicited quotes for already, and
So-
we've projected an increase based on inflation. Every vehicle manufacturer goes up a percentage at the first of the year. And then the projects on here are the EOPCs from Tetra Tech. So we've covered all those bases of any concerns of the cost.
I know in the past, when we did the budget, like when I very first started here, they were just taking guesses at what the project would cost. And in the last 3 years, staff has actually gone out and said, hey, if we were to replace this, what would it cost?
So it's a point in time directionally correct,
Yes.
the number. I
It
should
is,
say,
yeah.
Which is good.
So so you'll
Okay,
notice,
and then since this is utilities, if we look down 2026, is there anything in here that's going to trigger a new rate study?
We've planned for all these already.
So we don't need a new rate study this year for utilities.
But more importantly,
Unless there's a surprise, no, because we actually supplied our 10-year capital improvement when they did the rate study, so all of these
Okay.
things were already.
That feels
we're
very
already
bitter.
laid out,
the
so.
question goes back to our capital reserve study.
so I will tell you, the conversation I had with Rob Tellis last year is the numbers are tight, but we're covered.
From our capital reserves.
From our rates and.
They wouldn't have been if we
replenishing.
hadn't caught that deal at the end.
Well,
Yeah.
and the county, you know, they're hitting us again with another 8% increase on July 1st. We took that into account. So our rates are going to cover us and rebuild our reserves because we have spent quite a bit of our reserves lately. And then having these SRF projects where now that they're finally approved, Laura's been, you know, requesting the money to be put back into our bank accounts. So we're golden on this for now.
And how
For
often are we-
2026.
And at least through 2020, I think 29 was when the rate study was done from last year.
Laura, can you scroll this up? Because I'm assuming what's missing here is a total at the bottom.
There's no total.
Is it on there?
No, she had me
No.
take it off.
Oh, you haven't done that yet?
Well, I
Okay.
had
She had me
Because-
take it off.
She had me
Because
take it off.
what reason I ask
She
is,
didn't want to scare you.
well, the reason I ask is because I looked at those first two columns and I see numbers with 7 digits in it. We're going to have a deal that's like this,
You're gonna know, because the $1 million projects are either grant or SRF funded.
or bonded.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we didn't have the time when the agenda came out to, you know, separate SRF, capital.
So that's why there's no total.
So you
You'll have it at next
actually
one.
have cash in here as opposed to debt retirement if it's a funded 20-year deal. Because we don't need all that cash right at the bat.
There's a lot of stuff. we have.
That's a big difference. That's a big difference. That just example, 6 million, 6 million, 8 for the two meter deals. We're not gonna have to have 6 million, 8 in pocket. We're gonna borrow it.
Yes.
So that just essentially takes them, throws that out 20 years.
Right.
Okay, that makes a big difference.
Anything else for utilities before we move to the next?
Have you got everything?
We believe
So what we do is, we'll do it just like we did previous years. If any of the board members see an item, we'll just email you directly.
Yeah.
And then
Laura,
you
Email
too.
me.
I mean, Laura, and then, so if any of the 5 of us would think there's something that's missing, we'll.
I want to call out, the odor control units are in here. That is the added new since we've had the Girl Scout in Stony Brook. So
Okay,
that's really probably the only new project that you've seen other than maybe a vehicle replacement.
So
so then you put a note, we'll send it to, so if the 5 of us have anything they would like to add, if I could ask that we send it to Laura, and then Laura, would you put in a note, you know, like, this is by Carol, and then we can discuss it, if it stay or not. But whatever we send out to add, you just add it. No subtractions will be done at the workshops or
Right.
following meetings. But addition, I don't have a problem with adding, as long as you have the notes of who
Yeah.
added and who requested.
So we'll still continue to have let's say we have a a broken line that we have to go out that could be considered capital, we will have an operating budget that has money in there that we don't have to bury it in here.
This is above and beyond that.
And are we operating under the assumption that everything under FY 2026 on this list has been budgeted and approved?
We're asking of, well, for this, on utilities, yes. Utilities, yes. Other general fund projects, we're looking
Well,
for
it's a
your.
little-
So let me take a step backwards. So we've approved a budget for 25.
Right.
So this is everything that we will have under the 20.
This
Yeah,
is
this-
for 26.
It's what we'll be deliberating this year.
This needs to be
But-
tweaked, yeah.
But this is just utilities.
But are there any
Correct.
items, okay,
More to come.
yeah, and yeah, there's definitely more coming. But are there any items that were approved under 2025 that are also, because again, we run half and half. It's not like we don't run full fiscal year 25, fiscal year 2026. You're going to have some overlap.
Projects carry forward.
Yeah, so are there any carry forward projects that are on this 2026 that we've budgeted, residents have been assessed, and it's been approved?
Not on this utilities.
Not on the
Not on the
utility,
utilities, but
okay,
That's what I want to see on this list, because
Yeah.
as we're going through, I don't want to spend
That's-
15
okay.
minutes talking about something that we've already approved, that we budgeted,
Okay.
and that residents have already been assessed for.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and if it's not the full amount, what is, we've approved 200,000 of a 400,000 projected cost for 2026. So now we can really spend our time talking about what the funding deficit might be.
Well, the frustration in dealing with the reserve studies is that an engineer went out and looked at something, pick whatever it is. I'm going to call it a town center roof. And they did it in 2020, he said, that'll be good till 2027. We did our calculation. And all of a sudden in 2022, it had to be replaced. That's what concerns me with these, is I don't know how much robustness there is in the methodology that they use to do it. If they're sitting at a desk, they have not a clue. They'll just use a calculator and say, okay, it's 5 years, 7 years. But the reality is, it was terrible in that particular case.
Well, and in that case, you're almost taking a certain percentage of unforeseen pull forward item and you're budgeting. for
And
that.
this was a multi-million-dollar item for us at Pelican.
And you're
I mean, that
hoping
got us.
You're hoping that what you're pulling
Yeah.
forward doesn't exceed what you have, even
Your
if you're-
capabilities.
Even if you're partially funding. But
Well,
maybe that's something to consider.
In that
as well.
case, we
That's a
got
really
close,
valid point.
we
You
got close to
hurricanes, you
a
got all-
special
yeah.
assessment. Right, hurricanes are another good point.
The key on this is those notes, is that they be as definitive as possible, so we know exactly is this a wild guess, or how was this done?
Amen,
So
amen.
we
I do
got
love
some
the notes,
idea.
by the way. It's,
You what?
we asked for this for years and
Yeah.
finally
Yes.
we've been seeing it over the last, for a while with you, Laura.
Which is very helpful.
Yeah, what I'm saying, yeah, it's
Okay.
really, really helpful.
So nothing in utilities, we have a few minutes, and I think we
Well,
want to go
no.
public works.
We asked to have it updated for what year useful life is.
Yes, but meaning like, we're done with all the directions we have given Laura. Do we want to do public works, because it's kind of short, or do we want to wait?
I think
No,
almost the
And-
same.
and can I just add something? So we got a really light agenda. So if we need to go over a little bit,
Yeah, that's,
then
These
let's do
items-
that.
It's on the agenda anyway.
These items are on the regular.
We
agenda.
duplicated it to the regular meeting.
Anticipating
Because there was nothing else.
You
on
wanted
there.
to talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay, as I understand, tell me if I've got this right. We're going to take item 1, lift stations. Apparently, we have 29 of them. And we're going to list the last time, numbers 1 to 29 were updated or built or whatever. Is that how we're going to do
We
it?
have that in Cartograph, which is our asset management system. But if you want us to list all 29 lift stations out and.
I don't want to see that detail, but I'd like to know it's there.
Okay, we can have that in the back of the book.
I go again back to 5-year increments. I don't think anybody's good enough to pick this down to a year. If you got 29 stations and those are in 0 to 5, 6 to 10.
That's where I'm getting.
Put them in that.
All
Yeah.
29 are at one
Yeah,
time.
that's where
But
we're
the,
gonna
the
get.
exercise for that, why it's important is, so we've identified
Listed
there's
all
there's
the-
$150,000 that we need to budget over the next, until
5 years.
20, the next 5 years to rehab 29 lift stations. But if we go and we look at all 29 lift stations and we categorize them as 0 to 5, 6 to 9, we might find 50% of these, because of where they're at in their life cycle, need to be addressed in the next 3 to 5 years. So that's where the budgeting shifts.
Hold on again. There's another deal. This does not, at least the way I've always done these, that's not what this means here. This means that to implement those 29 stations, you need to set aside $50,000
Every year.
Every year. It means that in these next 5 years, we might spend zero.
That's right.
Yeah.
But in year 6, we're gonna spend all.
We should have
$50,000.
fun.
But you also could spend
Yeah,
500,000.
Yeah, but my point is like,
Yes,
but if in the next 3 years, if 50% of these need to be
you got a problem.
replaced, then we're
You
gonna
got
have
a
to
problem.
fund that somewhere else.
Yes.
But yeah, I read it
Yeah.
the same.
And
way.
then if we can see
We're on the
how
same
old they
page.
are, then you
Yeah, yeah.
get a better feel.
But this
for
is
it.
good. I mean, it's good conversation.
And is there
Yeah.
personal
Can we
experience of
discuss
30 years
that
life?
at the next meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, because this is,
Okay,
is probably the most complicated one we got.
Yeah.
all right, so
Okay,
then we'll,
so Laura, will you be able to add that additional column for the next meeting then? Not today's meeting, but in 2
I
weeks.
Just
will
know
do
it's
my
gonna
best.
happen.
I'm gone all next week, but I
Oh.
have a feeling I'm gonna be working next week anyway.
I'll work.
We'll figure it out.
Okay,
you
well, that
touch the
additional
spreadsheet.
column of where it is and it's,
Yeah, you don't touch me.
You saw that one? I was like, you touching the spreadsheet, I was like.
I'll be freaking out the whole week, so we'll figure it out.
We'll make our.
Okay.
All right, so then, since it's 3 o'clock and we finished the utilities, let's just go ahead and adjourn the workshop and we'll pick up the conversation on public works at the 3 o'clock meeting.
Right.
All right? Cool, let's take 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
5 minutes?
Okay. 5-minute break.
Rodeo.
I see.
It's like 20
Russ's spreadsheet.
It's like 20-year shingles.
18 inches long.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's gonna be smaller.
Now you got the
actually.
LED.
There was a
Yep.
company that had this polymer that you put
Yep,
on
absolutely.
headlamps,
Mhm.
and it made them scratch. Because it was a liability,
And safety issue, right?
and safety issue. So that's why they invested in it. I used to work with design engineers and those types of guys. They trace it.
You gotta go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We are
All right,
unmuted and ready to go.
All right. Okay, everyone, it's 3:09. We'll go ahead and we'll call this meeting to order. If we can all stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll have roll call in attendance. In attendance, we have Supervisor Carol, Ed, Doug, Bob, and myself. So we have all board in attendance. I need a motion for approval of the final agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, public comment.
All right, I have two. First one up, they both appear to be non-agenda. So first up is Rod Senior. Just a reminder, 3 minutes.
Welcome back. Been a long time, Rod.
Thank you. I've been away and I've tried my best to keep in touch. I hope you'll just give me a little bit of a break. I have a lot to say in 3 minutes, but please.
Be disappointed otherwise.
3 minutes.
All right. First thing I'm going to do is pass these out. Could you just pass those out? There should be 8. 1, 2, 3. Could you pass those out? Is there anybody got another one?
No, I'm good. I put one in here, so.
All right.
This is what I got.
Thank you, guys. All right. Photograph that I'm passing around.
Please
This
state your name for the record.
Rod Senior, Gateway Greens.
Need one more for Tony.
Excuse me.
Oh, sure, Bob.
I have a spare one here.
Spent some
Oh,
ink
sure,
here,
okay, Rod, I don't want.
Rod Senior.
Those are assignments.
All right.
Thank you.
Chelsea, this is embarrassing. Our pond bank is in a bad way. This is where I live. I understand that Elle is retiring. You just mentioned that. I assume she's the person responsible for the contractors. And I assume that algae staining and weeds are in the lake contractor specification. Well, they're not following it if that's in the spec and somebody's not managing them. So please don't let the water rise in the rainy season and cover this lot. It really needs fixing straight away.
Hey,
But
Rod,
let's not interrupt
Okay,
him
go
because he
ahead.
has 3 minutes. Sorry, Rod. Go ahead.
What was the problem?
We'll ask you at the end.
Okay, this segues into pond bank restoration generally. $58 million bond validation, of which 30 million is pond bank. And $18 million of SRF loan is pond bank. This is a huge amount that this community is being charged for pond bank restoration. We're not in danger of being served a violation by South Florida Water Management. Just reflecting back on when I was on the board, Armor Max was $90 a foot, linear foot. And I understand that Metro, when they bid on our 116 pond, which is where I live, it was $245 a foot. I phoned up Armor Max in Austin today. I phoned up Propex in Chattanooga. They're going to be suffering a lot due to tariffs on the material that Armor Max is made of, as well as the aluminum anchors. So this might be the time to review what we're spending on this pond bank restoration. Ed, you and I went to Heritage Palms a long time ago, 2015. They've done a very respectable job using geotube and matting. But if what we have is the Cadillac, I think it's time to think about getting a Chevy and just backing off a bit. We really don't need to spend this kind of money, in my opinion. There's got to be another solution. Next point is that I think the methods of financing our capital projects are overlapping. We've got 4 different methods going on. We've got the elephant in the room, which is the $58 million bond validation, of which 13 has been issued already, primarily for the park and the admin building. We've got the 18 million SRF loan, which is nearly all pond bank. We've got the capital reserve study, which is a big question mark. Even Stephen Bloom, who I spoke with for half an hour today, hasn't got a fix on what the results of that capital reserve study is for enterprise fund and general fund. In other words, what is the contribution from the community coming out of that capital reserve study? It's not clear. And then we had the $7 million 5-year bond loan from the bank that's been spent or rolled into the bond. All in all, the $58 million at 4% over 20 years amounts to about a $1,000 hike in our property taxes for the 5,000 gateway homes. That's a lot, and it's going to affect my ability to sell my house once it gets burnt through, and I'm worried about that. Final point. I just want to say that the office building, I think, is...
Roger, time's up.
Can you wrap it
Okay.
up in the next 30 seconds, Rod?
I'm sorry?
Go ahead and wrap it up in the next 30 seconds.
Thanks. I think this office building is way over the top. $7 million or whatever the number is for 14 white-collar staff is $500,000 per staff member. I think that's ridiculous. And I tried to get the Boy Scout building. It didn't work out. Bill Guy and Gary Newbar blocked it. I could have got it for 350 grand, and it would have done the job. Please support an effort to turn over our soccer complex to Lee County. It's what we need to do. It's going to cost us 600 grand for floodlights. It's costing us 400 grand every year
Thank
for
you, Rod.
maintenance. We need to turn it over. So, and I got that started. Let me know if I can help.
All right, thank you,
Thank you,
Rod.
Rod.
All right, next up, we have Joe Schofield regarding Parks and Rec.
Well, good afternoon, distinguished members. I have a question about,
Just announce yourself.
Joe Schofield from Pelican Preserve. I've been following a number of these meetings concerning Parks and Recreation and the methodology that was approved at the last public meeting. And my questions are, Pelican Preserve, people my age that have activities that we enjoy and how they're being addressed or planning to be addressed going forward if we're going to be, as it's been quoted as, one gateway. And if it's one gateway, we're part of that, and my age bracket is part of that. So I'm asking, what are your thoughts and plans and actions to accommodate us at our point? Our interests certainly aren't in the younger soccer games for sure, but we're interested in things like maybe a wading pool or bocce ball or pickleball, maybe even a softball diamond, and game rooms and social meeting places. So they're the things that would be of interest to me, and I'm sure other people in my age bracket. So I'm concerned, there was a survey that was sent out to Gateway residents at one time that was never sent to Pelican Preserve residents as part of Gateway. And is there going to be, or is there a plan to bring Pelican Preserve residents up to speed and get our input on what Parks and Recreation should look like? Because we're not going to be a part of that from what I see moving forward. So my question is, what are your plans? What are we doing moving forward? And how are you going to accommodate the needs? Because taxes buy benefits, and what benefits would we be getting out of all of this stuff? And I would certainly like you to address this as soon as possible rather than later. And I thank you for that.
Thank you.
I don't have any more public comment.
Okay, so I would like us to go back before we move to another topic, to go back to just two items that Rod had mentioned. One was, I just want to clarify what algae staining was. Rod, are you talking about the algae staining on the rocks?
Yes.
Okay, that's something, okay, so that's something that is not in our contract, so that's, and that is a fear that I had when we wanted to do the rocks, because I remember visiting Naples and seeing 5 years, and I personally aesthetically did not like the look, so that's something that what you see is what you're gonna get. It's not gonna get better because it's not within the contract. And then the second was the weeds, and I think Daniel touched about this at the last meeting, or if not the meeting before, that there was a need to increase for additional spraying during the dry months. Am I,
Yes, and then also we did have a turnover of the contract.
that I don't care.
So, but yes, that is the case.
So then let me ask you this, so if we had a turnover in the contract, like a whole new vendor,
Yes, completely new vendor.
Yes.
but when the older vendor left, it was spray, so we had a turnover, but we didn't have a lack of service, so.
That's what I have to follow up on, because it turned over mid-month, it didn't turn over at the start of the,
It was end of April, or end of February.
so we'll
Okay.
follow up on this.
Well, in addition to that, they've been going around putting in stone, extra stone on some of the ponds. Our pond, what I was referring to, needs stone, it's needed stone for a long time, but it got omitted. I don't know why.
So that work order management system I referred to earlier, we do have pond bank inspections, and all of these comments, stone, point repairs, overgrown grass, all of these are notes that are made in that inspection list. And so we're
For
taking,
who?
for our staff to
Okay.
then take and then action it with the vendor if it's a follow-up, or if it's an action item for internal staff to do point repairs or contracted out point repairs. So we're getting it documented from our side as well as the vendor side.
Okay, so then here's slightly frustration. And I haven't visited the new contract, but both of the contracts, and pond specifically, they were to be included and be supplied, the vendor to supply staff with pictures and with the report. And the report was to be combined with what staff wanted it to see, because I remember seeing the report very general about 5 years ago. And I said, okay, I see those questions and those answers and those columns, and they really don't apply to us. So I remember at that time, I had partnered with the vendor and with looking at what our needs and what we're looking as a priority, created that report, that chart, and that was to be used on a monthly basis. So
I haven't seen it. I'll follow up with staff and make sure that we've received it for the 2 months that this vendor has been with us.
We just started the work
But-
on March 1st.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but even with the other one, like if you're saying
Yeah.
there's a lapse of, okay,
And
follow
so
up.
this isn't like,
that's not
I mean,
aggressive.
in the rainy season, you're gonna have these rapid
Can I just
growths.
ask you guys, if you want to take a
We-
conversation, if you're going to step to the other room?
You're gonna have some rapid growth during the rainy season. But this is not something that just grows in 2 or 3 days. This takes time.
Mine's been
And this is,
growing, yeah.
based on the previous conversation that we had, around accountability, controls, like, this, I mean,
You recall. I brought
staff
this
should
up-
know this.
I brought
Like,
this
this
up
should
at the
be
last meeting.
documented somewhere in a report that says, and if it's me, if it's my department, whoever I have in charge of the ponds, I say, if you run across any violations, you send them to me, because I want to make sure Chelsea has them, so she doesn't get blindsided in a board meeting. Whether it's Ed, but we should never have a resident come up to this board saying that they're having maintenance issues on their pond with things like this, because it's not being sprayed, or, and hopefully the solution will be, oh yeah, we're aware of this and it has been sprayed, the spray just hasn't taken into account yet. But like, this is the stuff that drives me crazy, because we are paying staff, we're paying vendors, we have contracts to mitigate these types of issues. And if we keep having these things, whether it's littorals exceeding our control boundaries, or, like the rocks, okay, yeah, we need to put some more rocks on, okay, that's just normal, that's no more. But like, this stuff drives residents crazy when we spend all this money and they look out their backyard and it's just filled with grass. And I don't know what to do about the algae, but it's basically your
The algae's
issue is
fine.
algae and the excessive growth.
The issue is weeds.
Weeds.
Wait, I was gonna say algae, within the pond
It's weeds.
standard, there is no issue with
Yeah,
algae.
yeah, yeah.
Remember,
I just want to make sure I knew what what
Algae-
the issues were.
15% of the pond can be covered with algae, and that's acceptable. So algae is not an issue, and
Yeah,
staying
this
is
is
not,
weeds.
it's weeds.
And I'll go back to, if we're not aware of these things, either we're not documenting, or we don't have the proper bandwidth of, within staff, or the vendors that we're
We have a 1.5
using
staff. I mean, I can see
are
that
not,
help.
are not being held accountable. So this is where I always go back to the org plan. We have to make sure that we're adequately staffed for all the production hours. And again, I'm not trying to, I mean, staff does a really good job. And some of these things, might fall through the cracks, but this is what we got to get ahead of. Like, these are kind of my pet peeves here.
So if you follow up with, at least with me, I don't care with the rest of the board, regarding the checklist,
The form it's the same form being used. We're trying to implement that into Cartograph. That way it is our asset management system, and we can have a tracking record of when certain things were done. That way it's tied back to the asset, but we will follow
You're talking
up.
about, so staff's out there, they take a picture
Yeah.
of the issue, they log it, and then you've got, in your main system, we've got 20 items that we're tracking. One is, excessive weed growth on pond, or late 116, we alert the vendor that needs to be addressed, they respond,
Now
and
they're
we have an
It's-
action item.
Flavia,
Yeah.
it's both.
Yeah.
Both is occurring.
Because the vendor is to provide staff,
Yes.
because the vendor is
Correct.
going on a monthly basis, and then staff was going every bi-monthly or quarterly, they were not, because they were getting the reports, and if they were seeing something on the vendor side, like, hey, we had to heavily spray this, then they were visiting the site.
Right, question for you. Is this the first time that you're letting us, that you're alerting the district of your concern here?
It's not the first time it's happened, it's the first time I've come to the podium
Okay,
and told you.
okay.
It's
Okay.
been a problem for a while.
Okay,
All
yeah.
right,
So again, that's where we need to encourage.
so those are the
That's
only,
why we.
So, hey, send an email to customer care or whatever the response is.
Well, that's part of the reason why we're implementing cartograph in these inspections from our side and not solely relying on the vendor to, what we pay them for, but we need some checks and balances from staff side with reporting on our side as well. So
And-
we'll follow up, Rod. I'll personally email you with the.
What
follow-up
size
action.
stone is this?
57.
This is the old number 4 stuff.
Four.
This is 4, and we've gone bigger now, right? With
no, we
standard.
have going thicker, like that was like maybe 2 inches, and now, I mean, I visit, 2 ponds in Gateway Greens, and oh my God, they look great, like,
So we're using size 4 on all of
Same-
our
yeah.
pond standard for
Four.
rehab is size 4 from
it's not a requirement, size
what,
4, but yeah.
what we've been using.
Yes.
Yeah, from low
Yes.
watermark to control elevate,
Yes.
or above.
Above control.
But I
above
believe
control
we're
level.
doing really 4 inches, so number
inches.
4 are 4 inches, and before was number 4, it's 2
Yeah,
inches.
this is really sparse.
Okay.
Sparse.
What's the problem on this one is that if you go down West Links Drive, we have 3 ponds that are visible from the road looking out, and they're immaculate.
Are they newer?
They are new.
Okay.
They are newer.
Follow up, Rod, I'll be in touch.
All right, so, did anybody want to touch anything on Parks and Recs on Joe's?
Yeah, just real quick, Joe, so
Because we talked about
where
it
is
in
it? Oh, it's better.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we did throughout, I mean, really years of preparation around the parks is when we were gathering kind of voice of the residents and dealing with our consultants, is looking at amenities that would be beneficial for multi-demographics and age groups. So that's why if you look at what we kind of landed on, those items can be leveraged by seniors, the middle age, kids, whatever. So it's one thing to have facilities that meet multi-demographics that represent our community. But the important thing, which I brought up earlier, is you've got to have someone driving, facilities is great. But if you've got pickleball in one location, why would you drive to go play pickleball in another location? That's where having someone that is managing programs and benefits is really important. And we've never, ever, as long as I've been here, we've had someone that manages the leagues, which all that means is they coordinate with the soccer and the flag football league and just make sure they're paying on time and that they're keeping the facilities at a certain standard. They're not promoting or driving net new programs within Gateway, which I think is something that has absolutely been missed. I know in Stony Brook, we're sitting on a softball field that has not been used for probably 10 years. So instead of creating a Gateway softball league and trying to partner with communities that have amenities that would be willing to share them for a senior softball league or whatever, we just don't do nothing. We don't do anything. So I think one of the things with the new park is we have to make sure that we've got the facilities, but we also have the programs to benefit the residents. Because if I'm in Pelican, I understand why you may not be behind Parks and Rec. You've got all your amenities. But if we could offer programs that could bring Pelican seniors over and be able to mingle and have opportunities for social opportunities with seniors in Gateway Greens or seniors in Stony Brook. Well, now you've got a reason. It's not about the facilitation of the pickleball event or whatever event. It's about the social thing and the program that drives it. And to me, I think that's going to be absolutely important in driving benefit and continued improvement and buy-in on these facilities is the programs that drive them, not necessarily the facilities within itself.
And Doug, if I could add to that, half of this administrative building, not only do we have the boardroom, which can be treated as flex space, we have 2 conference rooms that can have an accordion wall that could be treated as either card games, programming, exactly what Doug was saying, that is literally dedicated towards public board's programming for if we want to rent out those spaces, if we want to have a sock hop, you know, in the boardroom. I mean, the options are endless, but the point of having flex space and having that air conditioned space was key to how can we expand our existing services. And so I think you just volunteered yourself to work with me on some programs with our Parks and Rec person. I would love to take some time and sit down with you if you do so. Thank you, appreciate that.
Hey, Ron, got a quick comment?
Yes.
If-
Do you want
if
them, do you want them to get up here? If
Yeah,
they
I
can?
would
They've
love,
been waiting.
Yeah. Okay, who's waiting?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, Rod, would you just, do you want to capture everything? No, it's not the time, is that I want to be able to hear, like.
Thank you.
Okay.
Doug, thank you for that. Appreciated. You mentioned Pelican and Stony Brook as being examples of Parks and Rec, the facilities that have been used and working. The difference, one of the many differences at the Gateway Commons Park, number one is that the majority of the community voted against the park in the survey.
Well, that's not 100% accurate.
Well, it's true. It was over 50% said no. But
That's not a majority.
let's not debate it. But
Would have been if they'd counted Pelican.
I'm sorry?
Okay,
Anyway.
can we allow
Go ahead,
Rod
go
to
ahead,
speak?
go ahead.
Okay, that's the first thing, but the second thing is that Gateway Commons is an open area. It's not behind gates like Stony Brook and Pelican. And please don't underestimate the cost of security, and you've got to put chain link fence around the whole thing, I would imagine, and access control technology. How are you going to prevent outsiders getting in? And you have a warm body in there 24/7. Is that being considered?
Yes, I'll answer for you, because yes, the only thing that we haven't decided if it's going to be a full perimeter around, or if we're gonna build fences as we're building the amenities. So either it's going to be a one-time upfront bid expense, which will be the whole thing around, or given the financially, like, are we gonna do small areas at a time? Because I know we talked about the pickleball fencing and the access control for that. So yes, it's going to be, what exactly that's going to look like, we don't know. And then for me personally, it will be a financial decision, like what makes more sense.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
Anything
you.
different? Sorry.
No. And I think having the sheriff's outreach there will be a huge deterrent. I mean, if we just had a sheriff's vehicle parked here, as a matter of fact, we do on Fridays at the game, there's a sheriff officer that parks right here, has his lights on. And about 90% of the time, it deters people from parking where they're not supposed to. Not 100%, but a lot of times just that president is a good deterrent. But again, my point on the parks is, in order for everyone to appreciate it, you at least have to give everyone the opportunity to take advantage of it. Not everyone will, but it is what it is.
Well, the one thing about the number of people that voted for it or didn't vote, I'd like a little clarification. Because if we take the totality of the district, it was overwhelmingly rejected. Does anybody disagree with that?
I disagree with that.
It wasn't overwhelming.
No. Matter of fact, it was four.
How many
up
people,
until
how
the
many
last
wanted
day.
it in Pelican? What was the number that came back?
You said together though.
I
I
don't
don't know, I'd have to go back.
I don't have that.
I think it was 50-50 for Gateway, but Pelican was excluded. And then Pelican was surveyed. I don't know what the results of that were, but I would expect it to have been like 95%.
It was 90-some odd
Percent against it. So to me, that's overwhelming. 40% of the community, 90% of Pelican didn't want it. So I don't want to, BS ourselves. We're going forward. We voted on it, and we'll probably go forward with the rest of it. But don't have any misunderstanding about whether our residents want it. They do not. Some
I
do.
still disagree with that.
Well, the data is the data. I just want to clarify that. Second
Okay.
thing, to Joe's point, when the original Parks and Rec Committee was formed, it was not an exclusion of Pelican, but Pelican had no equity in it, so I don't think there were any Pelican members other than our chairman. And now that we are, after the Rule 6 repeal, since we're going to be financing that at some portion, now it would be appropriate to try and solicit some people over there
Sure.
if
Okay.
they want to get it on the
So
committee.
this is a spot for me, because I personally remembering asking the same way that I have been asking for years for Ponds Committee, if they'll be willing to come to Gateway and take a look at it. Always I get a yes, but never an action. When Parks and Rec happen, this is exactly what happened. The money doesn't come from us, so we're not want to get involved, because it was open and I wanted it because my thought was, why reinvent the wheel when we have a success there? Then we can talk about opportunities and we can talk, and you know how many people came? None.
Yeah.
And that was the reason why I wanted her to appoint Carol because I wanted her to be able to, what can she bring for us here? At least that.
I totally agree with you, Flavia. The difference was the
They
flavor.
didn't pay and
No,
didn't
no,
care.
no, no, no. Well,
Yes, this is exactly
okay,
what
you
it
can
was.
say that, but the difference really was, and I heard this many times. Why do you people vote on something you're not going to pay for? We were actually attacked for that. Why does Pelican support the parks when they know they don't have to pay for it? So that, which side of the nickel do you want to look at?
And I'm against it because you're not sitting on the Pelican Preserve Board, so I will support you. You're sitting on the Gateway Board.
I totally understand that.
But that, I mean,
But I'm also representing, and I try to represent everybody. Well, a large percent of the people that voted for me didn't want the park. Not me personally, but a large percentage. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say, Pelican, you're criticized for supporting a park that you're not going to pay for. Well, okay, now we're paying for it. So it's a big difference. We're paying a portion. So
but you're
now
not-
it would be
but-
more.
But so here's my question, and you're not sitting here as Pelican. So I need you to look at the documents in depth into every item, financial or not, without a title. And
Well, we do, yeah.
With all the respect, Bob, you don't do that because as of April 1st, you're very clear on your email, and I want to get to that later on. You do not. So I really, if you want to omit.
I had an
Pelican-
April 1st email.
Yeah, if we want to omit, and I'll get into that, but if we want to omit the Pelican, we are in a board, and I respect Carol as she had asked, and I thought it was a good idea. We are in the district, right? So I don't really personally care. I look at Pelican items as if they were anything else. I don't care what their name on the title of the headline. It is a financial, I'm gonna look at it. I don't go in and say, because the committee of Pelican Preserve is okay with this, I'm just gonna put my blessing. If I have questions, I will. The same way in the landscaping committee, because I thought it was absurd that the committee wanted to spend an additional $80,000, because if you wanna talk about money, it's
You've
the
lost me.
whole-
I don't know what you're talking about.
The contract that we just awarded it, we awarded a contract to a vendor for Pelican Preserve that is $80,000 more. It wasn't the lowest item. It was because the committee wanted to stick with the current vendor that it had.
And we do that all the time, okay?
And there was a cost, but there was an $80,000 cost to that part of the budget.
An O2 budget,
And I supported that.
Yeah. because the people
because
that are
I
paying
question-
for it wanted to pay for it.
But I don't, is
The
it
people that
or
are
is it the
paying for it
committee?
wanted to pay for
The
it.
committee, what the committee said to us.
Yeah, that's the committee that pays for it.
No, the residents pay for it. The committee doesn't pay for it. All the residents pay for it. Bob.
No, you don't pay for it.
No, all the residents of Pelican.
You don't pay
for
for it,
it.
that's right. So the committee of people that represented Pelican recommended, if you're saying it's 80,000, I have no idea the difference. But we accepted their recommendation, which we've done for the whole 15 years I've been coming over here.
So I would disagree.
I'm not sure what your point
I
was.
would disagree with the voice of the committee, because not even our voice is like that. It's with it what they want. Because we have residents that say that they're opposed and they agree to certain items that is totally different in the committee. So I'm going to respect the committee's decision and their input, but I would disagree that what the committee does at all times is what the residents want, and I'm just gonna leave it as that.
Could I, just one clarification? Pelican has always had the opportunity, if they are a Gateway resident, to be on the Parks and Rec Advisory
Yeah.
Committee regardless. So
Right.
There's not any need in changing of a resolution
No.
for a Pelican to be on the
Right.
PrAC committee.
Just think
So
of the residents.
they've
I
always-
totally understand that and support it.
Yeah.
And
So
now-
We have open
And I agree.
positions now, so.
There you go. Joe?
All right.
But to the last comment, Flavia, we've had a number of 3-2 votes since last September. And you're telling me that nobody voted based on where they live. Bullshit.
I'll ask you to refrain from those comments. The
Okay.
same way that I have asked Ed to refrain from those comments, Bob. I already called him that just because he said that.
Moving right along.
All right, so let's move it on to local achievements and recognition.
All right, I have one. We have reluctantly attending our meeting today are Mike and Alex. We want to give them kudos. We received an email from a resident in Pelican. I'll read it without disclosing who the resident is. So last week, Tuesday, I fell around the corner just from our house. 2 of your staff, I'm sorry, I did not get their names. It happened to be Mike and Alex. We're painting the Verona Monument when it happened. I screamed loudly. They immediately rushed over to help. They helped me get up. got me to the door of my house, fixed the walker I was using, and gave me lots of good advice about not laying down, icing my head where I had bumped it, calling my husband, etc., while asking repeatedly if I was all right. Please give them both a huge thank you for me and let them know, I'm going to skip this part, that their quick action no doubt helped to prevent worse injuries. The way they jumped into action was very important.
Oh,
Yeah, nice job, fellas.
Good
Nice
job with
work.
the painting, too.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, so along to, we have committees and items to report, we have none? Okay, approval of minutes?
So moved.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nothing on consent agenda, district engineer,
Next meeting.
11A. We'll start back on.
Back to the,
So we're going to Public Works.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions?
I have one regarding area.
That was in the,
And because it was in the bond, then we're required to do it?
I don't know, similar to our budget, half the money has to stay within that silo. So if you had another project that was in the bond series under waterway
No,
management.
it's not reallocating of money, because I know we learned from Pelican Preserve that the goal was pond areas everywhere, and then there was not any for us. So I want to make sure that when we do the project, that 179,000, is that for the vision 2 years ago, or vision after getting knowledge from the Pelican Preserve Ponds group?
You're not going to get very many done for 179,000.
That's what I was thinking, because I divided it, I was like 20 grand, and so that's what I was
That's the
thinking.
remain, so we had put some aerators in first year I started, a handful of ponds, we had to run electrical service. That ate a lot of money. This, unless you have a different direction, but the money is dedicated for aerators, if line ones, we can do.
I think
different
this is
ponds.
an item that I like, maybe Bob can get away with, because I know you guys learned that. Why not?
It's as much paying to put electrical as it is to do everything else.
Yeah, so I think that is something that you need. Is it a need for all of it, and the quantity of it, and then the dollar amount?
Well, you
Because
just
I-
lay out the 108 ponds.
I-
How many have
I-
electric?
well, aerating the trunk line ponds makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Oh, they
The
all, yeah,
issue
they'll already be
is-
done.
Is getting the electrical to those ponds. There's your problem.
And getting
And
easements and all that.
$179,000 won't touch it.
No, you're talking, it's gonna be millions. But anyway, set a plan out. How many ponds? How many do we have now? And do a number per year based on how much we will
Let's
spend.
start with, and run electrical.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the electric's
But is the
easy,
direction-
some is a real
But
problem.
is the direction to start with trunk line and then go from there?
Trunk line,
That's
yes,
the way I would
And
do
then
it.
go out?
yes, but even with the trunk lines. I
What's
don't-
trunk line? I'm
so-
unfamiliar with that.
If
It's
you
the
look at
main flow,
report- the
main flow way all the way through Gateway that connects all the weirs.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I don't know what that has to do with aeration.
So not,
With the
so-
water, all the water, it's like a tree in the roots and
Yeah,
the trunk. We're bringing in that water, but we're treating it because before it gets to the point of discharge, it goes down the trunk line. So what we're trying to do is to rejuvenate
But-
all that water that's feeding in instead of going
excuse
to
me,
the
Ed, there's no
far-
water involved. All we're doing is putting air.
Sorry?
yeah, but he's saying the ones that,
Aerating.
but the ones that we're picking as priority are those. Because we don't have any ponds in Gateway right now that the water testing are indicating that there's a need for that specific pond. So there's none that are like on the radar. So then what we decided to look, since they're not on the radar, look at the main ones first.
Meaning largest, meaning.
Or-
Oh, okay.
It would be very helpful to have a
A
map
visual. yeah.
that shows, here's the.
But not even that. So we're looking, if it's 179,000 and given the amount of ponds that we have, we're looking like a 20 grand each. And
Oh, you're not
to-
gonna do it for 20
you-
grand each.
And so to me is, even if you put one aerator, which is not what we really want, because we want to have a 24-hour turnover, so that's.
One per pond, actually, rather than one every 100 feet.
Exactly, so that's, I guess, the
Okay.
information that maybe we can get from the ponds committee to go over with Daniel, so when we get a new version of the public works, we have a better understanding of before the cost, what the needs are. is the needs, and then we'll reflect the
And
cost.
do you start like from, if I'm hearing you correctly, because we don't have a water quality issue.
Yeah,
right
we
now.
didn't either, but
This is
yeah.
all preventative. Is the, if you're talking about the trunk line, do you start at the top of the waterway feed? So it's getting cleaner and better as it trickles down the system? Is that what we're kind of talking about?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, we didn't do that.
If you've got-
They're kind of individual
Because it's a
ponds.
flowway system,
It's
so.
it's the bang you get for your buck.
Yeah.
You're gonna get a higher dissolved oxygen if you're dealing with the flowway at the point at where you dump it into 6 Mile Cypress. If you go out here to the farthest pond in our system, which is like 82 or 83, and you aerate that, that's a flea on a, you know what?
You're right, so you gotta start at
Out
the
here.
top, and
Means
let it
nothing.
trickle down, because there's a trickle down.
I look at it a little differently, Ed. I hear what you're saying, but if you do the flea on the pond out at 82, what we were trying to present, to achieve was to keep that pond clean, and we didn't have temperature differentials and have fish kills.
Yeah.
So if the fish kills in my yard, that's a real problem. But if it's in the middle of the flowway, it probably isn't going
I don't
downstream.
think we have any of that. Our issue is that we need to look at, I know when we were doing the pond stuff years ago, you and I were going out and doing those samples, is that we were always watching the DO, the dissolved oxygen level. And as Flavia said, we really never had an issue. We had some issue with phosphates, we had some issues with other things, turbidity and stuff like that. But at
But
this
not the
point in time,
TSI, it wasn't.
but to go out and spend $179,000, my thing is that the real result is going to be not measurable.
You're probably
not
correct,
really
because
much.
we've never had a problem with water quality in Pelican, not even coming from the dump. But that's not what drove us.
Yeah, and then I think what we talked about too is the ponds under the FPL easement, we almost said that those ponds would not follow within the pond standards. They could have the littorals all the way around, because because there is no homes, there's nothing.
Same as a
We're
conservation
using-
area.
We're using them as a filtration system before
Yes.
it gets to down there, so, but, between Hampton Park and then Gateway Boulevard, so all those ponds that are under the FPL easements, the littorals there are, what one would say, overgrown, but we wanted it that way to be able
Yeah.
to maintain.
The
So-
only thing we might have revisited with better knowledge at the time in Pelican is I kind of wish we had taken samples of the pond flooring, how much algae had we accumulated, or how much debris had we accumulated? What was the level of that before we put the aeration in, and what was it 3 years later? We did not do that.
That might be something.
We only did it on one pond, pond 32, I think, out by Viadana, because we had major problems out there. But I don't, because they told us if you do this, then you gain 30 years of,
My whole thing on all this
Of
is that I
turnover.
just don't think we've gotten all of the information we need to know of how we're going to electrify these aerators. And that is critical. I know 2 ponds there, or 3 ponds, 109, 116, and 114 are linear ponds. And they have nothing. And we can't even do anything in our community to touch a transformer that FPL says you've got to upgrade the transformer.
and clearly that's one of the
So
big
it's
issues.
going to be problematic, and I think we just kind of stopped this whole process of where we're at, because you've got to have the energy first. You don't have the energy, you're not going to.
You're dead.
You're dead.
How do we calculate the quality of a pond or
The
ponds, or a pond's health, just in general? I mean, I'm sure the water is probably what you
So
measure.
as of we're doing right now for the pond standards, I think there are 9 areas that we look at. And then there's a calculation, which is the TSI. So anything below, I'm just trying to do it.
65, I think. on that
70.
number.
Yeah, you don't have to
Anything
get it
under
exact, so it's water
70?
quality. and-
Water quality, fish kills,
so we
that's a
look at-
big, a fish kill if you have
Ouch.
temperature differential,
Yeah.
or whether you have a,
What about just, like, if you're looking at the health of the pond, is it,
That's TSI.
what about just fish in general, or,
well, and we stock them
Yeah.
because you need fish.
We just started stocking, so I know we had a very small budget on that, but that, and pond's health also includes banks. So I'm not sure what you're asking more on the water side, right?
it was just more of a general statement, because.
You don't want it to stink.
Yeah, you don't want the algae
You
there.
don't want it to stink.
Don't want dead fish.
Okay.
You don't want
So
dead
that's
fish.
my only feedback, to see if we can revisit with ponds and get back with staff on that 179.
Yeah, we ought to know if we have electric anywhere right now.
And as far as the storage facility, I know that was initially what we were gonna put at the back soccer complex. Now we are potentially looking to relocate or have options on site. Right. So are we just gonna hold that 800K amount
in the bond, so.
So we just, but that's what we're earmarking that storage facility would be on site in this location as opposed to in the back. Okay.
Any other questions on the projects for Public Works?
I don't have any.
On this one, I don't think we necessarily need to know how many years left in the estimated life. I don't know how the other board members feel, but I would not necessarily have to have a separate column for that. I think a
Well,
lot of this is pretty,
Well, the issue is,
Where it
if
makes
you're going to
sense.
build a building, are you going to take and plan for its replacement 20 years from now?
I think
That's
the purpose.
That's the question you got to do. If you're not going to do that, then you don't have it on here.
but I think Carol's point, like, we may not need for all these items, just one where it makes sense, where life cycle does. is a
What we
factor.
might be able to do is go back to what she's saying is, when we take the paring knife out, some of this stuff that's loose falls by the wayside. Otherwise, costs are going to get pretty high.
Anything else for Public Works?
I don't.
Moving on. Parks and Rec.
So that one, before we start, FY '26, some of those items are the budget items that were budgeted for '24 and '25, they were not,
Moved out.
yeah.
Like your point, the resurfacing.
So that means that the money's already here, to Doug's point.
Some items, no. So.
Very small, right? Because the majority of the money, we already,
The pool resurfacing,
and so that is, okay.
that's a large one.
And so let me ask you, that's the price, that's from a vendor? 160,000, or are we looking to just paint?
No, it's the same material that was put in the back, tested in the back.
So they're gonna coat the whole decking with that same.
They make repairs of any cracks of the concrete, and then they put the topping on.
Okay, hold on, clarify. Are we talking the one that's bubbling up and feeling and looking horrible? Or are we looking the one in the
The
other
little
side?
ones, the little ones.
green,
that we did the same.
okay, so like the aggregate, okay.
So this is the actual price that we were.
okay, about
Okay, hold on.
a little more than halfway down, the one that says commons amenities, 660,000.
It's from the 2023 bond series.
Which Pelican is
Correct.
not paying into.
Correct. However.
You don't have an opinion.
God.
Okay, so I should not ask a question? Is that
No,
what
you
you're
We're
saying?
gonna, we're gonna have to like, put some type of like.
What is it? Is the
Before
question.
Pelican
Okay.
pays, after
What-
Pelican pays.
Before prize and after.
Yeah.
What I would like to comment on
Doug's throwing.
is that, given that the majority of 26, you're going to be building the building and everything's going to be torn up, what, do you even want this in 2026, or should that really honestly be moved over to 2027?
It'll be constructed by April, I'm told, by the OAK contractor. It should be done by substantial completion, April of 2020. So we will have expenses in
6 months.
Okay, but there's not even any notes here. What is the 660,000 for?
It is for the commons phase that's already been approved. Phase what?
Is that pickleball courts and
Phase
Yeah,
one, two,
yeah,
A,
yeah.
basketball,
that
paddle.
one, first section?
Yes,
Yeah, we might want to
So
put
this
those
is
notes
more
in
than
there.
just moving dirt
yes.
Yeah.
around and
Yeah, I think
excavating and
putting-
all that sort of
putting
stuff.
notes on that
But I
one.
thought the first section, it was like 3 million.
No,
The total cost was 3 million, yes.
but only 660. And then from the and then the carryover, I don't even
I'm
see it here.
confused.
Yeah, because we set aside on the bond 660. And then we had, I believe, an almost $750,000 of carryover.
Okay,
So
that had accumulated, we hadn't used
meaning
it
like,
yet.
and related to parks only, like we didn't take it
Right,
from
right,
anywhere
right.
else. But then we as a board agreed that we're not gonna assess, we already had the money, let's not use it because we're
Right.
looking into this project. So we have around I would say 700,000 plus the 660 from the bond.
Gives
And the
about
impact
1.3,
fees.
1.4 million.
That we already have it, we already
Plus
assessed it, we
Park impact fees.
plus in parking impact fees, which I think is 200,000.
300.
But this wasn't for below the ground preparation.
No, this
This is just physically to put it there.
Yeah,
Okay.
the stuff that you're gonna see
Then
playing.
I'm with you.
Okay,
Capital.
so then I think.
The
we can-
fencing and
we
courts
can
and
make those notes. And
that
then-
kind of stuff,
And I'm
Carol.
just gonna go back. full
Okay,
resurfacing
but
and
the
decking.
courts and stuff themselves.
Are in here.
So it's for the
Is in the
decking.
660?
Plus
It's gotta
the,
cost a whole lot more.
plus the
than that.
carryover. Well, we had a carryover.
I have
This
to put in here.
This isn't total cost.
is what's
We
budgeted.
have,
This is
we have
all-
some
this
carryover
is all
budget.
we're willing
This
to
is the
use.
offset.
Yeah.
This is the budget
Yeah.
only.
Yeah, we only
Okay.
use, we know it was a bigger cost and we said, okay, what can we do with 660 plus four other avenues that we have that we can collect money in, and those the park fees and then the carryover. So we said, that's it, we're not spending a penny more than that. That's what we agree on. We're
We'll
not
get
gonna,
that new total for the next meeting.
It would have been the same thing of putting all that stuff in here and then at the bottom showing those
Deducting.
additional
Separating
dollars
it
to
out.
pay for it.
How
exactly.
much
You
is
just say
underground
park and
piping?
put the
How much
total.
is lighting? Yeah.
So it's pool, resurfacing and decking, or is one of the others?
It's just the decking.
That's why, okay, because that's what I was like, there's no way, because I remember I think spent a 90,000 on just
did it
that.
when I
We
first
just did
started.
that.
So then I would have just removed the servicing and just have that.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm happier now. I don't have anything else. Anything else?
What is your tentative plan for the Public Works building?
$200,000. I know I said nothing else, but $200,000 for the digital message board. I thought that was like.
Put that as a placeholder.
It's not, are you on the next one?
No, hold on, the storage facility, that is technically the public.
Yes.
What are we, from a timeline perspective, like, thinking? We have no idea,
You can
because we don't know
ask-
what kind of structure, we don't know.
No, we already have the structure planned out. It was a mirror image of what basically utilities was gonna do here. That way we could save on re-engineering. We actually have a meeting with the county, an informal meeting, to find out what they're gonna require of us, if they're gonna put us through the ringer for everything, or if we can just do a limited development order. Tetra Tech will be here at your next meeting, and ask them what the projection is.
Because that wasn't quick. So we're hoping that this will be quicker because we've
Well,
already,
the deadline's pretty much done. It's just, is the county gonna require us to have a landscape buffer? Are they gonna require us to have irrigation? Like, what are those types of development requirements are they gonna make us have? Whereas here, we didn't necessarily have it because it was already on an approved DO from years ago.
and the building itself, what is the amount on that?
On this one, it was 400,000.
Okay, so. Okay. All right, that's it.
So Flavia, the welcome monument, as part of the admin building and the park, we did not, on the plans, engineer called this monument out because it's like, kind of like a playground. It's a specialty item that you literally contract with a sign company to call it. We did not have that in the budget, so I know we've talked about, like a digital message board that we could put in, farmer's market this day or.
Board
so,
meeting.
I have not gotten an actual quote from the sign vendor yet. That was a placeholder. But understanding, depending on if you just want to do a stationary sign, like, Gateway Commons, that's it. Or if you want to do more of a community message, digital message board, that's kind of what I wanted your feedback on.
I think we should look at pricing for both,
Okay.
because we might
Say
price it,
again?
I think we should look at pricing for both.
Yeah.
We might price ourselves out of one option.
Okay, we'll get pricing on both. We already have the electric. Talk about.
And not only that, like electric sign, I know we talked about, I'm just thinking, just the traffic that we get, it's just there. And I still think there's an opportunity for us to partner with the high school here with the digital sign. I know they charge a fee, but it's minimal. I think it's $100 a month.
They shouldn't be charging us for shit.
Okay, what is with that word today?
Yeah, what's
Doug?
going on? Doug, I'm appalled.
Seriously.
With all the stuff that
Nothing,
all the
you don't need to hear, you don't need to add anything right now.
They should.
Very good.
Yeah.
You're in the dunce line with me.
Good
All
job,
the
Ed.
concessions that we've
So,
made over there,
yeah.
they should not be charging us for anything.
Yeah, Ed, you can usually count on you for a couple of them.
Sorry.
Thank you.
So I would say
Bob's a bad
the charter
influence.
school added a digital board,
I
so
have no
there's an
influence.
opportunity there for the charter school for our messages, because I'll be honest, It looks so tacky. That sign, when I pulled in Gateway, and that sign is laying on the grass with their legs up, because that's what it looks like to me. Two PVC pipes with their legs up.
Oh,
It looks
whoa.
horrible. Yeah, that's stop there.
I didn't say a word.
So yeah,
Oh,
so if we can,
Denny's?
Moving right along.
no, at the Gateway entrance, like
Take a
literally
flight.
at the entrance.
Well, I don't
like,
think
they-
Denny's is that much better. It looks like
Oh.
2x4s
Bobby,
hammered
They
together.
got your attention, then, didn't
Yeah.
Anyway.
they?
Okay, let's move on.
All right.
Please.
So anything else for administration? Okay. Pelican Preserve, I will caveat this. This is just from Daniel's recollection of projects that the committees have discussed. The only committee that has met and discussed capital projects for next year is safety and security. The others have to convene and discuss this.
Hans actually got back to me as well. So this 525,000 here is actually 600,000 for next year because they need to do Pond 43. So the budget sheets that I'm providing for PPAC for next week does have the 600,000 for that pond. And the one change that they made for safety and security, they made their roadways go to 300,000 because they had 260 and then 40,000 for like another speed hump, and they just combined it all into one for the 300,000. And I was told that landscaping does not have any needs for capital funds during the next year.
So this is just.
In talking with the three chairpersons and the chairperson of PPAC, and they did not have input into this. 90% of these are going to be handled in their O&M budget. They're not capital items. I understand why we have them listed as capital, but from a budgetary process, there won't be capital items.
Right. Pelican is a little different for these because they don't have a capital fund. Like for the general fund, we have a 300, which is our capital fund, and utilities has a capital fund. Pelican does not. So there's actually our line items in their O&M budget.
Yeah, they do have capital reserves,
Yes.
but they choose to fund these things yearly through the operation.
And to touch a little more on what Mr. Tinkle had talked about earlier, and I think Chelsea mentioned it as well, when we met, we're going to actually have lines under each of the subcommittees this year, as well as in each of the departments for both capital projects and for capital reserve for each of those areas, so that we ensure that the money that we're collecting for those silos stays in those silos if it's not used.
Is that in 01?
We're gonna do it for Pelican, we're gonna do we're gonna do it the Pelican way, like you like to say. So we're gonna be adding that into the general.
Well, I got
fund
my
as
gateway
well.
hat on.
Like how you guys have your reserves for ponds and landscaping, well, we're gonna have that in the general fund as well. So we'll have one for admin, parks and rec, public works, pool, all that. They'll each have their own.
It's a lot simpler. I don't think it's great from an accountant point of view, but it's a lot simpler for the
I've
committees.
already set the GLs up, so we're ready to
Okay.
go.
So talking about capital reserve, in the past, let's say this board has set a capital reserve amount for the general fund for 001, not Pelican or Sugar or anybody else, of 300,000. That line item, Russ on the back end would have a formula and break that $300,000 by those silos. So by waterway, by roadway, by whatever our third one is.
Admin.
Admin. What we're changing to this year is we're gonna look to you and say, do you wanna do a flat percentage into what each individual silo or a number? So you'll see, once we get you the first draft of the budget documents in landscaping, you'll see capital project line item and a dollar amount, and you'll see a capital reserve line item. And you'll have to tell us what that dollar amount is, if any.
And they don't
Is-
even
is-
need to be handled all the same way. If you decide you want to do a percentage in one and a flat dollar amount in another one, that's fine. I just need
This-
to know what to plug in.
This methodology, I want to make sure I've got it in my head. There's going to be a number of silos in 01. There will be a number of silos in 02 and silos in 04.
Nope. The utilities fund is exempt from that because they do not.
I didn't
get
say that.
assigned-
It's 04 to 70.
Oh, yeah, and 04, correct.
01, 02, and 04.
Yes.
It'll be one of 4 silos.
Admin, waterway, roads, parks and.
In each of those, okay. And then the admin expense to support the silos within 01 is allocated a certain way. 02, okay.
Correct.
All right.
So our
I'm not
plan-
real comfortable and I want to learn, so.
So our plan, Russ and Steven and Laura are working together on that big, what used to be a monster budget book. We're trying to pare it down so I can read it. So our plan capital initiatives that you may have. And then by the first May meeting is also giving the subcommittees time to look at their budgets and give input and have feedback, et cetera. The first May meeting is have you a draft of the first budget, so you can.
High water mark,
And it'll, the sheets that you're going
not
to
final, but a
see.
start.
It's a start, that's correct, because June will be the higher
Yeah,
water.
it's a start towards the high water mark.
It'll be the initial draft,
Okay.
the first draft. So the format that you will see as a board will be exactly like what you're used to looking at in the past, as far as each of the areas will be broken out. Two things will be different. It'll be the addition of those 2 lines, and the silos will also be on the budget this year. So while we're going through looking at each of the line items, we'll be looking at the dollar amounts for each of the line items, and we'll be looking at what silo they're going to fall in. So there'll be 3 parts to it this year.
Good
Okay.
lead-in to the
And,
side.
and for,
Can,
I'm sorry, for this exercise, flashing forward, there probably won't be a Pelican Reserve capital budget, since they'll have all of these items incorporated in O&M. Is that a correct assumption, Laura, based on how you
It's
know?
semantics, but yes, that's how you want to
Okay.
look at it, sure. These items will translate into your budget as.
Oh, I just want to know if I'm going to see a capital item there, that's all. And I don't think I should, if the function of what's going to be done is already covered in the O&M.
Right.
Okay,
Because you already have these line items in your
I
budget.
understand, that's why I'm
Yeah.
So
just
you'll
asking.
have a capital reserve fund.
Correct.
Yeah, the 200,000 that they put in every year.
you'll
But it'll
have-
be broken out under each,
You'll have to decide.
Each of your
Yes.
silos.
So safety,
landscaping
So the
and
current,
ponds.
the current 200,000 they put out, which is now a lump,
Yes,
they'll just allocate it among the 3?
correct.
have to
Yep.
I don't know
decide.
why, but okay.
Well,
Because they're
It's the
they're
way you
assessed
generate the
differently.
revenue for it.
Right, roads is assessed different from.
But what I'm saying is everything in this is already covered under the O&M budget. All of these items that you're looking in front of you right now, they're already covered in the operating budget. They don't need capital funds.
No, that's
No.
fine, we agree.
The
Okay.
reserve, the reserve will
Yeah,
need to be
Reserve's a
allocated.
different item.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is a separate budget line item for capital
There'll
reserve,
be 3.
regardless of silos.
No, that won't be the case for this year. Because of the new assessment methodology, you will have a capital reserve line for ponds, a capital reserve line for waterway
Who
management.
determined that?
And because of the way that those things are
It's the way it's
assessed.
set up, yeah.
Think about how.
Okay, I won't.
It's not gonna make any big difference other than.
No, but I
how
don't
the
understand
No.
why we're
money's
doing it.
generated. That's the
It's
big
just a
deal.
lot of work for nothing,
Why
but
don't-
I'll
why
do
don't
it
you set up-
offline.
Set up a meeting with.
I'll do it offline.
She'll show you.
Okay.
Okay, anything else for Pelican? So again, we're waiting on their input. Moving on, great segue of silo conversation. Carol requested at the last meeting that the current budget be provided with the silos and how they were, how each line item was put to the different silos.
In other words, if we took 2025 and filtered them through the silos.
Yeah. Well,
No.
no,
See my big red thing at the top here?
Yeah.
this is not new. This is how it was done.
This is how, that's the silos, the categories that you're seeing are how the expenses were allocated for fiscal 25.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, using the
Okay.
current methodology, not the new one that you guys just
Okay,
approved.
oh, okay,
So that's why I put this big red thing at the top.
okay, I see.
So these numbers balance out with what we're currently spending.
Correct. And then this is why, the reason we're looking at this is because this is that third piece that we'll be looking at. As we look at each line, not only are we looking at what the line is, how much we're going to spend, we have to look at what silo it's going to go under as well. So this just gives you a preliminary of, for fiscal 25, this is how this stuff was allocated.
Okay, I
so
see what
who's
you're
gonna
doing.
be determining the silo? Is it Russ?
That would be you
or is
guys.
you?
We already did.
We will, pretty much done that. We're
Yep.
gonna take what we believe, where we believe it should go and recommend that to you. And if you think painting the sky blue should be in waterway management instead of roadways, then
Well, sure.
We'll have that
Yeah, most-
discussion.
Most of the things are going to
Okay.
fall
Pretty
pretty
much
common
where they
sense
are,
into one of the
yeah.
4.
Right. I mean, Parks and Rec is
There
pretty
might be
easy.
some gray, but most of them are
Yes.
pretty clear.
Yes, and so I mean, I took a stab and I included the version of the budget that you'll see in May, the first meeting in May. I included the way that things were for 25 and made a few tweaks based on the items that we moved around from the new assessment methodology. But again, they're not set in stone. They're just, either that's where they were, or that's where, based on what we've discussed already, that's where they should fall based on previous discussions. It doesn't mean that they have to stay there. So I just making that caveat before we have that and everybody freaks out when they see where they're allocated.
But 2025. that I'm
For
looking at.
2025.
The document we're looking
This is how
at-
these are allocated for the budget that we are in right now.
And it's based on what we have this year's actual budget.
Yes.
So
This
the
is
the
this
real
year's
comparison
actual
will be
budget.
when we lay out 25
Yep.
and then we put in 26, which I assume will be comparable, then we'll be able to see the difference of what has
Yeah, you
changed
should
or
be- yeah.
increased as a result of what we've done with methodology and everything else. Is that correct?
Yours is gonna be a little bit more difficult because yours was blended before. It was blended before. You didn't have the 3 or 4 silos that we had before.
Well, they had the inside and
But it was
outside
all
the gate.
lumped together.
Yeah.
They had the inside and outside, that's
Yeah.
about it.
So that's what, yeah. There, you're not gonna be able to compare apples to apples.
Well, that's what I wanted, that's what I
You're
wanted.
not gonna be able to do that. The assessment, the
Then
methodology.
I'm going to
is
ask why
different.
not? What's the difference?
Because of how you're calculating this change. Think about inside the gate, outside the gate. You used to have that.
But the bottom number, when it's all done,
Your dollar
is a
amounts.
number,
Oh, yeah, you'll be able to cover.
not the
cover-
categories. I understand there'll be
Oh, yeah,
ambiguity
you'll be able to
in the
see, okay,
categories.
this year we're gonna pay $700.
But if I'm paying $1 million this year and $1.5 million next year, then I know everything went up 50%.
Yeah, you'll be able to see that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll be able
Okay.
to see that, yes.
Okay.
Bottom line, absolutely, yes.
Any questions about the silos?
10 million, but we'll wait.
Okay, so when we see this document in May, is it going to look more like,
Yes, it'll look exactly
Yes,
like that.
which is what,
It'll look exactly like that with the silo category off to the
this
side.
is our budget that we approved last year.
Yep.
So you're gonna have another column here,
Yep, just like I added here.
silos,
Same as I added here, it'll just be added to that sheet.
I needed to calm
Okay.
down, so I made tea.
because it was very cumbersome to go from here to look things up in comparison. If the silo is right next to the name of the line item, it's a whole lot easier.
Mhm.
Yeah, the silo is nothing more than a title.
Right.
That's all it is. Yeah.
Stephen and Russ are working on that to give to us, and that's why you didn't get it.
When do you expect it? 26?
They will not have it to me until
The first meeting in May.
sometime the week of the 21st. So just in time to
Of
get it.
April?
Yes, just in time to get it. The only sheet that's done was Pelicans because I needed to get that done to get to PPAC and the subcommittees for their April meetings. So the rest of it, I will have in time to get on the agenda. So it'll be like a week before the next board meeting.
Staff's already working in the background.
Okay, thank you.
We're working on the numbers. It's just the layout that I'm waiting for.
Any other questions about this stuff?
That's it.
Moving on to district manager items. I know I mentioned it in the workshop, I just want to say it again, we did get notice that Lee County is doing an 8% rate increase of their water effective July 1st, and so that will hit us. We already took that into account last year because they projected an 8% increase over 5 years. So when we did our rate study last year, we anticipated this, we accounted for it.
I also accounted for it on our side for what we have to,
Yeah, as bad as it is, we knew it was coming
yeah,
and is coming in the future years.
But I think there's 2 or 3 more years,
3, yeah, it was 8% each year for 5 years.
and then,
25 was the first year.
and then, so on the other side of that, we did open the interconnect with FGUA, last week, so we'll be getting revenue on that side.
We're at about 20% maybe? I think that's what Bill said.
What is that again?
We're providing potable water to part of Lehigh
Lehigh,
Okay.
the connection up there.
to help them while they bridge with their construction loans or construction projects.
So do we have a building permit yet?
But, tell them what happened Monday.
They issued the notice to proceed, and the contractor's on a timeline. So they have X amount of days as part of the contract, so I felt that we have been more than patient. And so you'll see, they can go to the commons and do site work and move dirt without the building permit because we did get a development order, but they cannot do the vertical construction. I'm told that they will submit today or tomorrow. It was roofing fasteners that were holding up the whole shebang.
In our,
Roofing
in our
fasteners?
plan, on the perimeter, do we have berms baked in to that plan?
From the road to the,
We have,
Landscaping,
we have a
but not-
landscape.
well, heavy landscaping, but not, because I remember the bill was extremely expensive. But it's something that I'm totally willing to revisit.
What about this? What if we were to look at on the FPL easement, where I think we filled in some lakes towards that end where the,
Yes, but, mhm.
can we not maybe dig some ponds and come up with our own fill?
We
to
don't
create
need,
our-
we don't need much fill. The site's pretty much.
No,
it's
I
not
want-
that.
I
For
want
berms,
berms.
you know, like berms like Hampton
Oh,
Park,
like
like
a-
a
I would
very
like,
heavy
I would
berm.
like some berms on the perimeter, because again, if you're landscaping on that, it just increases the height.
He wants
It-
to build a pond now.
No, I'm just trying to, I mean, that's
But yeah.
where that backfill comes from, is from building ponds.
We've
That's
had-
why we got such shitty soil around here.
oh, there you did it again.
Sorry.
But if you do that, you're gonna be taking space because of the slopes of the deal.
Potentially,
Well,
and I don't even know if, you know,
Flavia.
but I'm just saying, there may be certain locations within that, because one side is a pond, so, you know, but instead of having to put fences necessarily around the whole thing, if you just, I mean, 'cause no one's, I mean, there's only a few places that even we have to worry about, you know, maintaining access. So let's just think creatively. Can we put some berms and then heavy landscaping? So then maybe you're only controlling access to
We'd
the
have
front.
to have stormwater calcs reevaluated. And,
You got
That's
some
such a
issues.
sheet flowing on.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
you got some
If
issues.
that train has already left the station, that's fine, but we hadn't talked about it, so I wasn't sure what we were gonna do in perimeter, whether berms were baked in. So
And it is, the fill itself, it's not expensive.
that's what I'm saying, we just dig from our backyard.
What do you mean we, staff, or say
don't know.
vendor, come do it?
like Doug volunteered.
Spitballing.
Yeah, they're the shovel.
I have no
Here's-
problem. Give me an
Those golden
excavator.
shovels,
Give me an
that- those
excavator.
five,
No,
those
give me an
5 shovels
excavator.
we got out of that.
I can run an excavator too.
Give me I'll run the excavator, Bob will run the truck.
I'll go with the excavator.
All right, I'll run.
I'll pull out all your cable lines and your
Give me
sewage
a
lines.
220.
I'm supervising. Because
I'll
I'll take a trip, no, I don't think you
I don't
want to be
think
responsible.
you want to
for
get
that.
involved in this.
Anyway.
I don't have anything else.
Your board at work.
But but yeah, if that's, I think aesthetically that would be nice. Okay, anything else?
Attorney?
Do we do the district manager? You're done?
Yeah, I don't have anything
Yeah.
else.
District attorney?
A few items. I'm trying to schedule a meeting with the attorney for the Lennar. She's been in trial preparation to go Santa Luz issue. In regards to the pipes that have been damaged, what could happen during the rainy season, the effect of the lake bank.
Yeah,
So
they're losing all this time and the ponds are way down and they're fiddle farting
I
around.
just sent her another email today saying, let's do it before the rainy season. On Stony Brook, I drafted the initial draft to the pre-litigation settlement agreement, sent that to Katie Berkey. She's looked at that. She sent it to her partner. I've also drafted the initial draft of the quitclaim deed and grants of easement. And putting back for Katie's comments, and then what we're suggesting, then we'll send the package to Charles Mann to look at it from WCI Lennar standpoint. And then we have a bunch of work to do on getting the exhibits together, which is gonna be fun, just to make sure the district has all the requisite easements and the detail as to its improvements.
When will that come before us?
Well, we were hoping for next meeting, but it might, probably May, I think. We want to wrap it up by June, from a budgetary perspective.
Yeah, because that impacts this budget big.
That's correct. And also, we've been working with Laura and Chelsea about how much is in the 04 fund, what can be spent before then, or repavement
So
perspective.
Yeah, you got some carryover
we
issues.
Yes.
I spoke to JT, the president, and they've actually already sent a resolution in favor of them taking over the roads. Their HOA board already
Yep, I have that.
said that. As part of those conversations, we really needed to have this done June 15th, if not before, because of our high water mark and not wanting to have an 004 next year. So I asked for them to come up with some viable projects that they could do.
My
to
down.
Spend down those funds.
Or at least
They-
encumber the monies.
Yes, so they've produced a list. Daniel's actually gonna meet with them next week in their PAM to go over that list. And I believe it's achievable.
Putting lights on that softball field?
Big lights. Big bright lights.
So,
that-
but
Spotlights on the
I
entrance
have-
monuments.
I have to commend the HOA because they have been super responsive. I mentioned that resolution in another meeting.
It's
and-
actually, there is a change.
Yes.
And I was expecting that change to see 2 years down the road because you look at behavior. I've seen a major change with, I will applaud that too. Working with the district, they're not agreeing with everything, but they have been very respectful of working with the district, coming up with, here's a problem, here are 3 or 4 solutions.
But there's a light at the end of the tunnel now.
Absolutely.
That's the big difference.
There is. The next item is just the district was served with a lawsuit. I don't want to get into the details about a woman who allegedly fell and broke her leg at the soccer complex a while back, and she's suing the district, Mainscape, and JSM Services. Nature of it, defense counsel has been retained by the carrier. I've worked with them before, defense counsel. And the carrier is very responsible.
Is this recent or in the past?
The incident occurred allegedly occurred, approximately, yes. February 24th, 2024, a year ago.
Over a year ago.
Yeah.
Anything update, have you updated Tony? Sidewalks, starting from school.
No,
scooters.
no.
Anything else, Tony?
Come in.
Have we gotten any feedback or communications? PPCA? About asking for. No. Some kind of a meeting.
Nothing I'm aware of.
Okay.
Other than,
Could be.
What'd you say?
They want what?
We won't send out our stuff as much.
Go forward our communication.
Again?
it has to go through Fay, and that they won't send out any of our Parks and Rec stuff, they'll only send out, applicable to them. They don't want
Email.
email fatigue.
I get 9 emails a day from them. One more from us a week is not gonna give us, I'll talk to Faye. That's not what she's told me. I don't have any weight. 3-2, I lose over there too. Okay.
I mean, that's just, the more we educate them, all of us, whatever. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so nothing else for district board business?
Agenda management, you have it up. The auditor will be here at your next meeting to present the audit.
I reached my timeline, I actually.
Which
we
year?
actually got the audit.
Yeah, very good, Ed.
We actually got it before.
2022 is done.
We actually got it before the.
It is?
31st.
We're happy to report 2022 is done.
Funny. Anyway,
Okay, and then also at our next meeting, Laura, aren't you going to have for us the, based on the weekly tracking, the
Yep.
comparison with the percentages?
It's actually done.
it'll be in the
It'll be
monthly
in the
report.
next meeting.
Okay, but
Yep.
you'll have that
That'll be
for
my
us
6-month analysis.
in 17,
Yes.
on the 17th.
And
Well,
ba-
it's will be part of
okay.
my report.
Because
and
I did
based-
not see it on,
It's part of my admin report.
oh,
Just what we always do in the second meeting.
And based on that report, is that how we allocated 26?
No.
No, that's what I thought.
You know, you'll be happy because you would have more if I would.
And I think that's what we're kind of talking about, right?
Yes.
Like 2 to 4% higher.
Yep.
I don't make the report, I just do.
Next.
Anybody has?
I could
anything
make
else?
the report for the whole year from home and give it to you tomorrow.
And do you have anything else for, agenda management that we want to add questions?
Just make sure you put in the workshop, the president's workshop on your calendars for the 24th at Gateway Greens.
And it's at 4:00 now.
24th of April.
Where is it at?
Gateway Green,
Yeah, Gateway Greens.
here to pay for it.
Is it the clubhouse?
What was the time?
4.
Is that the clubhouse?
That's it.
Where is it?
I did not have the time, 4 PM.
Empty.
It'll buy. Ed's buying.
We're almost at it.
We stay for dinner, Ed?
Is that Masters Week?
I'm sorry?
Are you cooking?
Can we stay for dinner?
Is that the week after the Masters?
There's a damn lot of questions being asked.
Chelsea, can I explain about the
That's
That's
the Flavia.
Flavia's meeting.
Sure, I actually love that explanation. Go ahead, Carol.
If you didn't see
In the
it,
mic.
yeah, just announce your-
We want to hear you.
State your name for the record.
Carol Brocky, Pelican Preserve. After the
And are
pub,
you speaking on behalf of? You're just yourself?
the Residents Alliance.
Okay.
After the public hearing that we had, I talked to Chelsea about the Alliance helping out with the emails. My stipulation was that we would stress the important emails, not the fishing derby, not the egg extravaganza and those type of things.
I'm happy you know them.
Pardon me?
I'm happy that you know of those events, though.
I know about those things. And then I wanted to check. I checked with Tom Shaner, who was under the impression that there was a request previously about sharing emails. The database cannot be shared. The Pelican Reserve Community Association, the database is legally not able to share. They won't even share it with the Residents Alliance for it. There's a lot of legal problems with that, with an HOA, with needing those permissions.
Okay, so it's an easy one, because I went through it electronically, so every resident, including yourself, because you do live a Pelican, it's an official records of your association, so if they opted out for email communication, all you need is to send a certified letter yourself or anybody else and say, I want those. If they sign up for it, they have to provide it, so that's statute. I'll tell you right now, 7:30, 3:15, get them memorized in 3:05,
Okay.
so they can do that to you. But I don't disagree I think if they choose, like I would like us to continue regardless of sending to Faye or to whoever it is. If they want to pick the ones they want to send it out or not, that is up to them, because that's the information that we're going to repeat to the residents. You didn't receive it, we send it out, and then you can adjust, because if you are hearing from your residents, hey, I wish I got it, then you have back way into
Okay.
sending it out.
So I talked to Tom about the database. I talked to Faye, and Faye said there is an arrangement with you that they have done. If you send something, they would forward it on. And we're looking at the important things that, data that comes. And for Mr. Geppert, I mean, email fatigue is a main thing. When they send this many for, the social clubs, this many for fitness, this many
For bocce ball. Yeah, I get it.
I mean, for all of them. And so it's email fatigue is a real thing for us. But it's the CDD important ones are important, and they are sent forward to the residents.
But another way to do it is, I don't know if there's any way you could, I'm assuming you have a website because you have more than 100 homes, which is now required. There's nothing that would restrict you from just adding a link, to your website that says for events or for communication from the district. So we'll be able to share that information. That's very easy. So the information is there. So you can choose to send what you think is important to them, but all of them won't be available by just one simple click on your website. So that's an option too, and I'm sure Chelsea will be able to help with that as well.
They do have on the website where you can opt in for whether you want fitness ones, or whether you want the social ones, or you want the
I'm just saying
residents.
very general, for Gateway Services event schedules, click here.
It-
And you don't have to do anything because it's going to redirect to the district website.
And it's really important. I mean, I receive the Alliance, the CDD emails because I've opted in. And I think that's important to continue to get people to opt in. And it's a constant battle, with the technology. And I mean, with the senior group, there's also the issue of there's some people who are just not technical, and they don't want to be technical. How they do their banking and how they do their other stuff, I have no idea. But
it is an issue. But I wanted to make sure that's clear that Faye is more than willing to forward the emails, the important ones.
All right, thank you, Carol.
We do have that constant contact, I'm sure with Carol had signed up for, where people can, the residents
The
themselves
code red.
can sign up for that. Not code red, it's constant contact.
Okay.
That's how Randy sends out all the information, all the communications are done through that. And they can sign up to receive whatever they like.
But I think there's, I know that it might be perceived like the fishing derby or stuff like that may be focused just towards, the kids, but there's also really good volunteer opportunity. That could be appealing.
For grandkids?
Participation for grandkids, but more importantly, I think there's volunteer opportunity for those in Pelican. I know that's a very active base, and if you don't get to see your grandkids that often, being able to come over and participate in a fishing tournament or to volunteer at one of the leagues or one of the events might be a really cool thing to do. I mean, I don't know if you have that type of exposure in Pelican. That's probably one thing that you don't have is kids in Pelican, right? So, it's one of the things we have a surplus of in Gateway. So that's the added benefit.
We
of
used to have a
Gateway.
park, it went away.
That's the value that we bring to Pelican as
Speaking for
kids.
himself.
We used to have a playground and it went away. Really did.
Yeah.
It wasn't used.
Anything else for agenda management for Chelsea?
No.
No? All right, so we'll go ahead and move to supervisor comments, and I'll start with Carol.
I don't have any.
No?
Yeah, just one. We all, I think, got a letter from Mr. Ciselli. What happened over there? How did we get off of our property so far?
Well,
I read the whole email. I don't think we did. I think
there was a 10-foot
Okay.
utility easement, and that right-of-way does not follow the sidewalk, it meanders. So we were within that 10-foot utility easement, but the utility easement did not specifically call out drainage. So the contractor is addressing it. We did authorize it.
So we were using a utility easement for the conveyance of drainage.
Yeah, so the contractor's correcting it. Since then, they've adjusted and we're,
So what are they gonna do, go down the sidewalk?
What they're doing. Yeah.
Hope we don't bust up the sidewalk.
well, contractor will have, just like if he had continued to use it, they have to repair it to its pre-existing condition, so.
Okay, so
That's all I had.
I had that too. Doug, you have anything else?
Just a couple things. So I brought this up a while back, and I know, Flavia, you had mentioned that we are restocking ponds.
Mhm.
I know with a lot of people that I've talked to, it seems like the fish population in the Gateway ponds has
declined.
greatly declined. I mean, substantially declined. And I don't know if that is because of just invasive species. And again, my boys fish and stuff, so it seems like they are catching a lot of invasive species more these days. But one of the things that we should probably look at is, I know we're doing some stocking today, but I think we need to maybe have L or figure out how we can assess.
That's one of your first deals of showing that you got a deal with solid oxygen bottle. One of the things we ought to be looking at, so maybe, and keep in mind, we are drastically knocking these pond levels down to do the lake bank projects. So the whole environment of that pond is probably a little shook up.
Yeah.
I mean, we're moving that water 3 and 4
Yeah.
feet.
Well, I'm even talking about historic ponds that,
You don't see any bass. I mean, honestly,
No.
that's
Have you seen otters? Because a couple of years
Very
ago,
little.
otters went through
The only-
Pelican
the
Marsh
only
and wiped
otters
out
that-
all the fish.
the only
Yeah,
otters
then
that
we
we
have-
have is down the FPNL easement. There's one right
Yeah.
in those 3 ponds. That's the only location that I've seen
They will wipe
otters,
out-
and just because it was in the back of where I used to live on Pinecrest. But so I think we just need to take a look at it, because that's why I asked the question earlier, like, how do you gauge
Is
the
there a
health of ponds?
recognized fishing club in Greater Gateway?
No.
no.
In Pelican, there is one.
And
They
we have-
set the
There would be
location.
one in Stony Brook, but all the neighbors complain when
Yeah,
people
and
fish.
we have a good turnaround with the fishing contest, but that's an opportunity. We can have an invasive species contest, like catch the most.
Because they promote the invasives and encourage their fishermen to remove them.
Well,
So
but here's
that's
what
the
I-
thing. Al did that a
pull 'em
few
out.
for, pull him out, and then she was like, humanely,
But-
this is how you kill
Yeah,
them.
but then they also stock them. I mean, we stock,
Yeah.
not invasive. but
Not for $3,000, I believe that's
Well,
within our budget.
Yeah, so we need
We
to,
don't-
we need to increase
We
the
have
budget.
10,000 a year.
And
Yeah.
if you're releasing, several thousand, baby bass, if you've got an invasive species issues, they're going to get gobbled up pretty quick. So they don't even have time to mature.
Well, they
So-
only buy them from the state, so I'm not sure what the size of it is, but all fish purchases are from the
Yeah.
state.
So anyway, I think we should look at that. Maybe you can have staff or even a specialist or someone just take a look at it. If we need to increase the budget, because I think that's,
We might want to take and go to those weirs, the 3 weirs, and just right off the bat, check on the DOs and some of the other levels and just see what they're like.
see what they're like,
I
yeah.
will voluntarily go with a pigeon pole and make sure that means invasive.
I have some volunteers that would be willing to do that for you.
And
but-
there's, I don't remember how many sites we do at Pelican, but there's the data, like 15 years worth where the,
Well,
about
our
5 or
poor
6 sites.
contractors on their lunch break keep trying to fish in the ponds and I keep getting complaints in Pelican.
Well,
they're allowed, but whatever.
So, nothing else there?
yeah, I do. I mean, Rod brought it up, and I'm not bringing it up because Rod brought it up. But, you know, we have continuously had conversations around trying to improve the methods and means that we use for pond bank restoration. And I mentioned earlier that I think we always try to have value engineering and do things more cost effectively. And we created a standard that, I think the standard that we use today, one of the reasons for that is because we didn't want to have to spend all this money and do the same work in 5 years or whatever. So we tried to find solutions that last and that were aesthetically pleasing, but more importantly, they were functional. But I do think it might be worth for us to stand up either a ponds work group, or maybe let's just have a workshop at some point in the near future, where we can actually have some good debate on means and methods for how we're dealing with ponds, whether it's materials. Now, I don't think the end product should be any different. I think we should use number 4 stone, and the look and feel should be the same consistently.
Well, I don't
But what's
think-
underneath,
Well, Rod's not totally up to speed. We have tremendously reduced the amount
Yes.
of Armamax we're
yeah.
using.
And-
Tremendously.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I do think, I don't know the last time we really had a workshop where we brought in experts and said, look, here's what we're using, here's how we're using it. Is there comparable materials? And, you know, looking at what we have to do left at the state of what's going on. It used to be supply chain a couple of years ago, coming out of the pandemic. It was just really difficult to get things. Now we've got other things like tariffs and other stuff that may drive prices up. So either we're going to have to do one of 3 things. 1, continue doing what we're doing, whatever the price is the price. 2, maybe have to look at a moratorium, like a stop for 2 years until the prices, you know, maybe come down, which I don't know if there's an appetite for that. Or 3, we look at other cost-effective methods to be able to work on ponds. So I think we spend so much money here, it's worth us just taking a second, spending an hour, and just have some open discussion. We may come out of it saying, look, we're going to just keep doing what we're doing, and it is what it is. That's fine, but I think we should at least pause and have some conversation.
Well, also, if you recall at the last meeting, you approved an HMGP grant that we were awarded $1 million. Once we get through design, we're applying for the construction funds, which will only cost us 25% local match. And we have the opportunity to get even that 25% local match from the county with another grant. So we could have the remaining 21 ponds that are on the pond priority list done at 0 cost to this district.
Well, the
That'd be
ponds
awesome.
that have just been done
Love
recently are really, the quality of work they're doing is much, much, much better. I think they've learned their lesson on how to do a lot of this stuff, but the quantity of the real high-ticket items, which was the bringing in a ton of outside material first compacted, has been eliminated largely because we don't have the huge escarpments
Yeah.
anymore.
So we've done the worst ones first, and so, yeah.
We did the worst ones first.
Yeah.
And then the other one is that instead of going with the Armamax, they're going with the other products to put
Yeah,
down.
yeah. And like I said,
So
we
far-
might be in a good shape, but, you know.
So far, they're looking, the ponds are looking good. I hope they hold up. I hope they hold up.
Yeah, I got a
I
couple,
agree, but I would disagree, and I visit Pelican Preserve Pond, and I'm sure that Bob will side with this. I have concerns about the means and methods and everything else that was done on that pond,
which pond?
In
you talking?
Pelican,
Pelican.
Which pond?
30, is it 36?
36.
36?
You have a concern about it?
Have you seen, did you walk the pond? I was
Yeah.
there last week. I mean, there is no cocoa matting, it's all gone. They use the fill from the pond to the shore, so it happened on 83.
you're talking about coconut mesh though, right?
Coconut mesh,
Yeah, well, we
yeah.
would never do that.
Well, we just did it, like. Pelican.
Yeah, Pelican does.
So-
Yeah, Pelican, but that's something I think we,
But I'm concerned because we spend the money doing it, and if you go look at it now, I mean, honestly, to me, it looks worse than before. Like, all you see is the I walked the entire bank, all you, the coconut mashing is gone. And my biggest thing is the fill, and so this is the part that I didn't understand. They to save money, I'm assuming, this.
They dredged.
They took it from the pond, which we did that on 83 multiple times. And all it happened was either irrigation or just light rain or the drains from the home, it washes it away. So I was actually there the second time, the day after the vendor was there pulling the same sand back, and the sand was already backing out. There was the slope there, that is a 3.5 to 0 on one side of those ponds. Like, it just goes straight down from where this desk is, straight down. There is no slope.
3.5 feet?
Oh, yeah. There's
Then I have not been out there to look at that.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it is bad. Maybe if we had Latours to hold on those items,
Well,
but Bob.
and they will.
It,
But we have a number of ponds. I'll look at 36 again. And where our focus is, of course, when you're full, do you have an escarpment? And the answer is they won't. There will not be an escarpment. Now, if there's the 3-foot escarpment when the water's down.
I'm talking about maybe 3 homes, so the length of 3 homes, 3 feet down, 3.5 feet down.
And there's what, 100 and some homes there?
I
So there
don't
may
know,
be,
we
there
have
be.
golf course area, they didn't have, but that, I mean, straight down, like straight, I mean.
Okay, there might have been a washout, I don't know. Could have had a sprinkler head, it could have been anything. But I can't speak to it, so I'll just take
Yeah.
your word for it and go look. What I've been trying to determine, and I've not been successful yet, is how much money we have spent as a district on our ponds. I don't care whether it's paid for SRF or it's paid on operating money or paid, I don't care wherever we got it from. The genie gave us the money. But I really would like to know what we have actually spent per pond in total Gateway since we started this.
In totality.
Yeah,
Total
I think that's a worthwhile number that we ought to have. Which pond did we do in what year and what did we spend? I can usually find the proposals, but I never can find what we actually spent. So I think that, to your point, Doug, if we totally understand what we have spent and then look at all the ponds in the total district and whether it's worthwhile. We did 2 ponds. We're going to do 2 ponds this year for 180,000 apiece, 47 and 48. And I fully expect them when it's done, that they're going to be just as robust as the ponds we did with coconut mesh 4 years ago, because they still look great. We don't have a drop off. I'm not talking about low water level. I'm talking about when it's at control elevation, and they're working and they're good. So if we have a problem with 36 with a couple homes, obviously that's got to be fixed.
Hold on, I think you have a problem with 36 all the way around.
Okay. Well, I said, I'll go look at it.
The drop off is some home, but because you have no Latours, and I'm saying even with Latours, we have Latours, I'm just going with 83, you have some. But when I'm telling you all the sand is all into the water, I took some.
Yeah, we've had that problem before with the fill. You're absolutely right. The fill's not good.
All I'm saying is, does it make sense?
If there's
for us
a better
have
way to do it,
conversation?
yes.
I mean,
Yeah,
and I love it when,
yeah.
you know, that Ed said that what we're doing today is much better than what we were doing, and we're driving costs down. That's great.
And we are. But
And-
nevertheless, you're not going to make a fundamental change in the way we fix them in the greater Gateway community, because everybody's going to say, they got the rocks, that looks beautiful. Now you're going to try and
Yeah, well, I don't
short
think,
me.
yeah.
So we got to look at.
Well, but there's one difference
can be
between,
done.
and again, we don't want to have one pond that we're doing today that is substantially less quality than what we did 5 years
I get
ago.
that.
But
I
from a
get
look
that.
and feel, there's stone around the
Yeah.
whole thing, and if we're just using different materials underneath and it's still.
If it doesn't
shelf life-
work, yeah.
Yeah, then it's
Aesthetically,
fine.
may not look the same, but then they have to understand that. Yes, Joe, if you just say your name.
Joe Schofield, Karina. I have a question. My pond's one that they're going to be redoing, and they just did the surveys to get the 20-foot pond easement. And some of those stakes are like 1 foot from construction of the houses, which is, I mean, all the,
Welcome to our world.
well, in any event, my question is this: where does the slope that goes into the pond start? At that 20-foot mark going down to the pond? Because it's so many, you go out, what, 6 feet, 1 foot drop or something like that? I forget what
Control
that,
elevation up, so control elevation,
yeah,
High water mark, control elevation.
okay.
yeah.
So what's the slope supposed to be?
Some some
Four
are
or 6 to 1.
6-1 or 4-1, and I think there's only one in Gateway that's 10-1, but 4-1 or 6-1.
So we're like-
4 is most typical for us.
You and
So-
I have this part in our.
4 feet out, 1 foot down, 4 feet out, so
Every
8
4 foot's a drop.
8 feet
And then
is 2 feet.
Then
Right.
then 2 to
Yes.
1 after that.
So if I take a 2x4 route and I level it and I mark.
Yeah.
And that's from
High water
that
mark.
20-foot mark out to the
Yeah.
high.
So
No,
right now
high
it's
water
real-
mark.
So right now it's real low, like right now it's really hard to measure because it's low water level.
Oh, okay.
So it's one control level, which means the water is actually flowing to the next pond.
Okay, so it's measured from the
Go to the
controlled
high water
water
mark.
mark.
From the
Yeah.
grass, the high
Okay.
water mark,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
High
okay,
water.
thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And
That was
then,
easy.
and-
Supervisor comments to you?
Okay, so yeah. Oh, Bob wasn't done.
Yeah, I've got one,
Oh, shit.
and it's regardless, oh, that was rude.
That's 4 times today. We're not eating dinner.
Fine, me.
Are you fixing?
No, we're making a phone
Oh,
call.
Okay, this kind of dovetails on what we've been talking about. I'd like to see the Gateway Pond standards updated, and I think it's appropriate now if we merge them with the unapproved Pelican Pond standards to get to a common standard. To that objective, I'd like to resurrect the Gateway Pond Standard Work Group, or whatever that's constituted, other people that did it before, with the objective of aligning the 2 documents with the Pelican people and to come out with one district document. I would propose or hope we'd get participants from the Pelicans Pond Group, of course, the Gateway Ponds Group, if such exists, staff, and probably a supervisor to assist in developing one comprehensive district document to present to us for ratification and acceptance later on. I think it's time to update that. And we can handle the things we talked about today, like the torals versus the kind of plants and updating the visual standards.
Would you be open to, instead of, because I'll tell you before, I mean, Ed and I were in the group, and then I think active Ed and I, and then I think Jim, and then maybe one more person. So reenacting that group is going, right? So I think it'll be more beneficial for the ponds committee, and I'll be open to the ponds committee doing the document and just presenting it to us, their suggestions.
To the board?
Because the board at the end is gonna be us.
Yeah,
our
to
group
approve
making
it,
the
right.
decision. So
Yeah.
create,
And staff, absolutely.
So what you're recommending
yeah,
is,
we kept staff out of the ponds committee.
The first time.
The first time around, right? And when we presented to the board then, staff had their say at the, prior to the board implementing or not. We didn't have them going with us, so we worked, and when we presented to the board, and then the board at that time asked staff, do you agree or disagree with that? So to me, at this point, I would even like to keep staff out of this if the board agrees and have because they're gonna come and give their suggestions, and then you can look at it, you're gonna have the document too, and staff can come to the board and give their suggestion, and then we'll make the decision.
I'd rather not. I'd rather staff work with the Pelicans.
And now that Daniel's there, the whole world's changed. I
Well,
mean,
I'd rather,
we have staff.
staff can help facilitate like the actual writing or updating of it. So I'd rather they just work together and then bring it in front of you.
yeah, and here's.
Yeah, I think,
So that's fine.
yeah, it's a changed world. Before, we kind of
Yeah.
relied on one person and okay.
And here's what I would, the kind of guiding principle here would be, we are looking to create a global uniform document. Now, that does not necessarily mean that all of the standards that are in Pelican, that you're looking to, update those in the global standard. Now, I'm sure there's going to be some best practices and things that you want to push, that you want to push through. But there are going to be some areas that probably Pelican's just going to have a higher standard. Like it's something that we wouldn't even.
I'm not
be
quite
able-
sure what that would be, but okay.
Yeah, I don't know, and I'm just hypothetically, I'm just saying.
Development orders.
There
is gonna
might,
be the big-
there
Well,
might be some things that.
that's one of the things that I really want to tackle, that is development orders. We override that, and that's what I hope this will do. I really
Okay,
don't
well,
care
let's
what the
not
LDOs
get
were.
ahead of.
I know,
Okay,
but
my
I mean,
point
that's
is
one
like
of the driving purposes that,
The purpose is maybe to merge the 2 documents, but more importantly, it's about having one global standard.
Yeah.
I think that's the guiding principle, is create one.
and the
global
standard ought to be based on what's best for our ponds and help us in financial
Right, because
conditions.
a pond and Pelican and a pond and Gateway should, in theory.
They're all the same
should
pond,
be
and we don't want to have to
managed
repair
and
these
maintained
things
the
2 or 3 times. And if there's something we can do that maybe overrides
same way. 10-4.
certain prejudice. Okay, that's it. That's the main thing I wanted to know.
All right, so I just want to talk, so 2 things, I guess Chelsea just tapped out. One
So she's going to
is-
set that up, is that, will staff start coordinate this, to get the interested parties together?
Oh, yeah, I'll talk to her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's all.
So I had one, which was the grass replacement of the turf in front of the school on the right of way. I noticed the FGA, is that what it is?
Are you talking about the sod that's not?
No, I'm talking about they replaced half of it, not all of it. I didn't even look to see if it's taking
Down by the
because,
high school?
yes, yes. So I know we have no water, so once they put the saw down, the bahia, I didn't have a problem because I know that's what it looks like that way, but they were missing half of it.
No, so what they put down was already dead, and I addressed that with the
Okay.
contractor. I spoke to the FGUA inspector yesterday, and he was gonna make them tear it out and put it back because they have to water it for the county standards for at least 2 weeks to get it established, and they did not do that. So they're gonna be coming back and
But-
fixing it.
And I get that, but the area that they put in, it's not all of it.
Okay.
It's just half, so it's a bigger area.
It's,
Not much bigger, but it's a bigger area, so I wasn't sure if they ran out of sod and then,
okay.
so
I'll-
just take a look at that, but,
I
you
need to
know.
go back and look at the pre-con videos to
Okay,
see, because
perfect.
it was bad bad
But-
before.
Because of the parking, but much further this way. Okay,
Okay.
so I have that, and then I wanted to talk about the backflow issue, and I think Magnolia Lakes was one that we just realized that.
Yeah.
So when staff went out, and if you guys recall, there were some areas that we were not following within the county standards to have a backflow for utility. And then notifications went out to the
Need
community.
backflow preventer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So notifications went out, given time to do it. And I'm speaking on this because Magnolia Lakes was one that we didn't have it. So we had to install one. And so we contacted a vendor and everything was great until I got a call from the homeowner that the backflow, because of that meter for the amenity, it was in front of their house. So here my vendor, it's already done the work, you know, and then Bill was great, he came on site and we're trying to see like, because none of them, this didn't happen to any residential as of we knew then, and I think Bill says he found, I think, 2 more.
What was these, on a condo or something? Where would you have a backflow preventer?
I had one because I have 2 bathrooms.
Uh,
So it's literally in the front of the homeowner's home and it's sticking 2 feet up in the air.
They stick up.
So so the homeowner was asking, you know, like, can we relocate this? But unfortunately, the meter for the amenity is in front of his home. So to us to do that, the gateway service would have to relocate that meter. And then, you know, then either the HOA or the homeowner, because I told him, I said, the HOA is not gonna pick up the cost. You don't want aesthetically there. If you pay your portion, then the HOA will give you a blessing. But then I said, but I'm also on that board, so you have to go to that board and ask, because there's gonna be a cost, you know, so that's something that we need to think about for not just that, but the other 2, because I guess we have to notify, so that's something that,
We have a couple of them right in front of monuments. They look horrible, but the only other choice is you move the meter.
Pay to move it.
so
all you
that's
can
the
do.
thing, so are we willing to allow a homeowner to, are we willing to remove the meter, to relocate the meter and bill the homeowner? Because if that's an option, that's the option that I wanna give them, but if we're not even willing to do that, then I'm just gonna be the one to say, look, stays what it stays.
Whoever makes the request is the one who's going to pay the cost.
But but I wanna know if that's an option. Like, can I go to the homeowner and say, look, if you don't like it,
I don't know why you wouldn't be able to do that.
As long as there's consent of the.
the homeowner, the HOA for the easement, yeah,
Yes.
so I have to do 2 folds. I have to get a consentment from the HOA to remove that to the HOA property, and then ask the homeowner, are you willing to pay for it? Guys,
Yeah.
guys,
Yeah, I don't.
guys,
Perry,
guys.
Perry. I think that's the way to go. Just if they want that option and they can get the easement, great.
Okay, so if you can just talk to Bill,
It's an
and,
aesthetic issue.
so just talk to Bill and then let them know if
Who? Let who know?
at least the homeowner that wants, because we comply, the HOA comply, we put the backflow in, we told the homeowner, if that's what you
If-
want,
We're out of it at that point because it's a backflow issue. So if you guys want to communicate that amongst yourselves and
no, but the meter belongs to you. I mean, I
Correct.
cannot, okay, so if the homeowner is willing to pay the district to relocate the meter, you have to tell them the cost, not me, not the HOA.
I know, but we have to tell him to contact us. if
So
we
that's
have
what I'm
a
saying,
That's what I'm
like,
question. Yeah, we're not gonna call him and say, hey,
but that's what I'm saying, so I
Yeah.
can give out the information and
Yeah.
say if there's relocation. So then I think communication should go out to the other two homeowners that we haven't started the work and say, look, we understand it's gonna be here before we start. If you wanted to relocate, there's a cost and they won't be in front of your house, but otherwise this is where we're gonna stay. Just communicate with them, okay? That's it, that's the only two things I had.
Move to adjourn.
All right, so move.
Yep. Thank you.
one thing for signature, Flavia, that's it.